Chapter 1998. Amaterasu was not invincible. There were many people who could dodge its attack. For example, Uchiha Madara, Orochimaru, and Uzumaki Naruto. However, everyone was sure that their strength was far beyond Yunjongjuan's. Others could dodge it because they were strong. As for Yunjongjuan in front of him, he could dodge the attack of Amaterasu. The sun rose from the west. Aw, damn it. Being burned by fire, a fire that could never be extinguished, not only did it bring physical pain, but it also brought about mental oppression. Fight! In the end, Yunjongjuan gritted his teeth and swung his sword. Then, he did something that Dustless did not expect. Puchi! The sword light penetrated Yunjongjuan's body, and his arm, which was burning with black flames, fell to the ground. This old guy is really bold. He actually took the initiative to cut off his own arm. Dustless was quite surprised. Not everyone had the ability to regenerate infinitely like he did. Whether it was on a whim or after careful consideration, Yunjongjuan's courage to cut off his own arm so decisively was enough to impress others. However, this is also the best choice. Yunjongjuan could still make the right choice in the face of such a great disaster. It was not bad. Cutting off his arm was his only choice. There was no other way. Yunjongjuan, what do you think? Suddenly giving up on attacking, Dustless slowly stood up and walked over. You originally wanted to kill me, right? Now, the outcome has been reversed. The person who is about to be executed is you. I have always been a very kind person. Come, tell me your last words. Last words? Yunjongjuan's old face twitched when he heard this. For some reason, every time he talked to Dustless, his calm heart began to rage. He was not dead yet, but he wanted him to say his last words. Was there anyone who was so good at cursing people? Dustless's expression, which seemed to say, "You should thank me," made Yunjongjuan feel disgusted. Ah, why are you looking at me with such hatred? I'm doing this for your own good because the next move. You will definitely die. Dustless was not afraid of Yunjongjuan's hateful gaze. He shrugged with an expression that said, I'm thinking for you. Of course, if you really don't have any last words, then, ta-ta-ta. Just as Dustless's voice fell, the quiet surroundings suddenly throbbed. The sound of hurried footsteps came closer and closer, and Dustless's cold face also relaxed. Who is going up the mirage at this time? Dustless's gloomy face was replaced by curiosity as he looked out of the palace expectantly. Phew! Seeing that Dustless's attention had been diverted, Yunjongjuan, who finally got a chance to catch his breath, quickly took a deep breath of fresh air. The way he took a deep breath made it seem like he was very reluctant to part with the fresh air of the world. Yunjongjuan. I've finally found you. This is great. A voice suddenly rang out, filled with endless joy. Zhongliang. After seeing the visitor, Dustless frowned slightly and pondered, why did Zhongliang come to the mirage? Just now, I used my observation hockey to perceive that the entire Sangxi is in a mess. The Qin army has also started a war with the people of Shenongtang and Siuatang. There was a saying that when enemies met, their eyes would turn red, and blood would flow like rivers. Overall, the Qin army had the advantage. After all, the disciples of the School of Agriculture were mostly a bunch of random people, while the Qin army's gold fire cavalry were the elites of the elites. According to common sense, Zhongliang should be assisting Lu Ji in the war at this time. Why did he appear in the mirage? Could it be that he is here for? Suddenly thinking of something that no one could let go of, Dustless smiled strangely. Dustless? Isn't this bastard dead? Seeing the miserable Yunjongjuan, Zhongliang glanced at the young man with evil intentions and a cheeky smile on his face. A face that he would never forget suddenly came into his sight. This bastard Yunjongjuan, didn't he say that he poisoned Dustless to death? This guy is still alive and well. Zhang Liang regretted it. If he had known that Dustless was still alive, he would never have come to the mirage. Wasn't he walking into a trap? It was all because of Yun Zhongjuan. Cough, cough, cough. Yun Zhongjuan felt the resentment of Zhang Liang, so he had to endure the pain of his broken arm and suggested, "Mr. Zhang Liang, let's work together to deal with Dustless. After we succeed, I will give you 10 elixirs of immortality. How about that? Deal." After pretending to be reserved for a while, Zhang Liang nodded resolutely. "Okay, let's deal with Dustless together." Yun Zhongjuan was overjoyed and looked at Dustless again. His eyes were full of determination. He waved his sword and was about to attack Dustless when he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. Puchi! The cold and sharp long sword penetrated Yun Zhongjuan's abdomen, crushing his internal organs and causing him to bleed. Yun Zhongjuan's eyes widened when he saw this. He looked down at the long sword in his abdomen in horror and felt dizzy. What surprised him the most was that the person who attacked him was not Dustless. Why, when he turned his head, he saw Zhang Liang with a cold face. Why? It's simple. I don't like to waste energy on things that don't pay me back. Zhang Liang glanced at Yun Zhongjuan and gave him a kick without hesitation. Bang! Yun Zhongjuan was kicked 5 or 6 meters away. His face was bruised from the fall. How naive! Dustless glanced at Yun Zhongjuan with pity and could not help but sigh. In the face of the deadly temptation of the elixirs of immortality, how could 10 of them satisfy Zhang Liang's appetite? Of course, it was far from enough. Unless Yun Zhongjuan gave all the elixirs of immortality to Zhang Liang, his ambition would be curbed. Then, the two of them would work together to deal with Dustless. Chapter 1999. Damn you, Zhang Liang. How dare you betray me? You used to be a member of the Confucian school of thought. Are all members of the Confucian school of thought like you? Despicable. Hypocrite. Yun Zhongjuan glared at Zhang Liang. His murderous eyes revealed the anger in his heart. Originally, they planned to happily kill Dustless together, rebel together, and become the founding heroes of the country together. However, who would have thought that Zhang Liang would be so insidious and despicable? Zhang Liang had betrayed him for the elixir of life. Yun Zhongjuan panicked when he thought about it. He had fought Dustless and died in battle. However, Zhang Liang had plotted against him and killed him. Yun Zhongjuan felt aggrieved and angry. Zhang Liang, you shameless traitor. Even though Yun Zhongjuan did not have long to live, he did not hide his resentment toward Zhang Liang. He was like a volcano on the verge of erupting. His body was brimming with rage. He wanted to take revenge, but he was powerless to fight back. Even though Zhang Liang was right in front of him, it was still an insurmountable gap for him. Yun Zhongjuan's internal organs were all destroyed. It was already commendable that he could barely maintain his consciousness. Give it to me. Zhang Liang coldly snatched the large jade bottle containing the elixir of life. He looked through the narrow hole and saw a large number of red pills. He was overjoyed. I don't know if this elixir of life can make one immortal, but I believe that it can prolong one's life. Yun Zhongjuan had given Zhang Liang one before. To be safe, Zhang Liang gave it to an old man to use. It was not out of kindness. He just wanted to experiment on the old man. Then, a miraculous scene happened. The old man actually recovered to his middle-aged age. In his excitement, Zhang Liang even forgot about helping Lu Ji fight the war. Compared to immortality, everything else was not worth mentioning. Let's split it in half. From now on, we will go our separate ways and mind our own business. How about that? Zhang Liang asked as he looked at Dustless. Hearing this, Zhang Liang ignored him and just shook his head casually. His meaning was self-evident. You're rejecting this. Zhang Liang frowned slightly. He was not surprised. The strong always had some privileges. How about you take 60% and I take 40%? Zhang Liang had no choice but to take another step back. However, Zhang Liang's flattery did not have much effect. Dustless only looked at him indifferently and remained silent. It seemed that he was still unwilling. That greedy bastard. Seeing the situation, Zhang Liang secretly cursed in his heart. People as greedy as Dustless were as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. You take 70% and I take 30%. I can't go any lower. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Liang looked at Wu Chen firmly and fearlessly. Obviously, this was his bottom line and it was impossible for him to back off. Wu Chen smiled and said, "Don't worry. Don't worry." Who would have thought that Wu Chen just sighed and then said calmly, "Zifang, don't you think it's ridiculous? The elusive mirage is my territory to begin with. The immortal medicine's primer used to concoct the immortal elixir is also my blood. This is originally mine. Now that you want to share my treasure, if you were me, would you agree to it?" Ha 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 ha, Zhang Liang was dumbfounded. However, Yun Zhongjuan, who was on the verge of death, started laughing. "Zhang Liang, you're dumbfounded, aren't you? I know our sect master better than you do. If you joined forces with me, you might have a chance of winning. However, since you've ambushed me, you can forget about getting the immortal elixir." Yun Zhongjuan curled his lips and mocked Zhang Liang, whose face had turned green. There was a pleased expression on his face. "Tisk, tsk. As expected of my former subordinate. You know me well." Dustless smiled knowingly. Then, he looked mockingly at Zhang Liang, whose face had turned green. Damn it! After a moment of silence, Zhang Liang glanced at the large number of immortal pills in the jade bottle reluctantly. Then, he decisively smashed it on the ground. "Dustless, you can forget about getting what I can't get." Zhang Liang's face was contorted as he laughed maniacally. It seemed like he was going to fight to the death. He even wanted to die together with Dustless. "You've overestimated yourself." Just as the jade bottle was about to hit the ground, a strong gravitational force suddenly pulled it over. Wanxiang Heavenly Attraction. Dustless gently hooked his finger, and the jade bottle that was about to fall to the ground fell into his hand. "How dare you smash my things on my ground, Zhang Liang? You're so arrogant. If I don't kill you, I'm afraid no one will respect me in the future." Dustless placed the jade bottle that contained a large number of immortal elixirs aside. He leaned his head on his palm and said lazily, "Come on, I'll give you a few chances to resist. If it's a one-sided suppression every time, it'll be too boring. Since God has given life to ants like you, it's also indirectly giving you the right to struggle. As a human being, one must be merciful." If Zhang Liang was killed in an instant, he would definitely cry but have no tears. "You bastard, stop talking to yourself." Upon hearing this, Zhang Liang glared at him angrily. His majestic killing intent erupted to the extreme. "Very good. Come here." Seeing that Zhang Liang was really angry, Dustless became interested. "Come on, Zifang. I'm right here. Look at your sword." With contempt in his eyes, Dustless provoked him. Just as he was waiting for Zhang Liang to kill him, this guy's action shocked Dustless. Shio 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 shio. Although his act was very scary, it was still an act. In the end, Zhang Liang suddenly turned his head and pushed his inner force to the maximum limit. Damn it, he shamelessly ran away. "Zhang Liang, I was kind enough to give you a stage to perform on, but you insisted on running away. Forget it, I'll kill you in one move. At most, you can complain to the King of Hell. Anyway, I won't die, so there's no loss." 90 of Breaking Tao, Black Coffin. Chapter 2000. I wanted to let you die with your corpse intact, but you just had to choose to be cut into pieces. Is it more appropriate to say that you are pathetic and ignorant, or that you are retarded? Is your brain damaged by the door frame, Zifang? Dustless was puzzled as he stared coldly at Zhang Liang, who was leaving with a whistling sound. Whoosh! Whoosh! A demonic black luster suddenly appeared in the dead space. The power it emitted was terrifying and eerie. Wherever it passed, the void was slightly distorted and showed signs of collapsing. Damn it! Zhang Liang naturally felt that he was targeted by countless murderous intents. Cold sweat kept dripping down like rain. Break for me. Seeing the black light coming from the left, Zhang Liang suddenly swung the long sword in his hand with force. A dangerous slash appeared at the front of Ling Su's sword. Are you still struggling before your death? How boring. It's time for you to wake up, Zifang. Hearing this, Dustless didn't even bother to look. Zhang Liang was just a human. How could he resist number 90's Tao Breaker? This was not a dream. Zhang Liang was still countless dimensions away. Pfft. The slash that Zhang Liang had high hopes for collapsed the moment it came into contact with the black evil luster. Not even a residue was left. It collapsed inexplicably. Whoosh! 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 Zhang Liang himself became a fat lamb waiting to be slaughtered. He could only watch the incoming black light with despair in his heart. Pfft! 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 Zhang Liang's body was instantly torn apart by the black coffin. Not to mention his fragile body, even his hard bones were easily cut off. Zhang Liang turned into a pile of bloody foam. Boring. Seeing Zhang Liang killed so easily, Dustless suddenly felt dispirited. He had hoped that Zhang Liang would play a few more rounds, but he didn't expect Zhang Liang to be so weak. How funny. You were injured first, but you are still alive. You are lucky, Yun Zhongjuan. Dustless lowered his head to look at Yun Zhongjuan, who was still breathing, and said teasingly, Yun Zhongjuan, you have completed your mission. I advise you to die obediently. Dustless bent down and pointed at Zhang Liang, who had turned into minced meat, and said with a harmless smile, Yun Zhongjuan, you'd better not defend yourself. Do you want to become like Zhang Liang? You'll become a pile of minced meat. You bastard! Upon hearing this, Yun Zhongjuan glared at Dustless with resentment. Then, he closed his eyes with eternal unwillingness. Yun Zhongjuan and Zhang Liang died just like that. At this moment, in another direction, the ongoing battle was gradually coming to an end. All troops, listen up. Defeat these lawless rebels. Remember, dead or alive. Sanghe, which was usually full of undercurrents, had completely become an important place for the rebels of the farmers and the fire cavalry of Qin State to fight. Moreover, the outcome was exactly the same as Dustless had imagined. In the end, the rebels of the farmers were defeated, and many of the top officials of the farmers and Situ Wanli were wanted. The Qin army almost used overwhelming strength to inflict heavy losses on the Shenong Hole. All of them were defeated and disintegrated. Of course, the fundamental reason was that Wu Qin had told Meng Tian about the rebellion of the Nong family. Only then could Meng Tian win this war. At this moment, on the Mirage. I'm so shocked. I didn't expect that you guys would be captured alive. In the magnificent hall, Dustless sat in the former seat of Dong Huangtai. On his left and right sides were Yueshin, Concubine Yan, Great Master Ming, Young Master Ming, and others. As for Yu, she sat intimately on Dustless's lap, swinging her bare feet. Wu Chen, you traitor. If you want to kill me, then kill me. If you want to scrape me, then scrape me. I can tell you that I will never tell you the news you want. In the spacious hall, several felons were kneeling, including Chu Nangong, the new hall master of the Shenongtang, Situ Wanli, the hall master of the Four Mountains Hall. In addition, there was a very unexpected figure. Master Xiaomeng, I can understand if others betray the Qin kingdom, but what about you? Not only were Chu Nangong and others captives, but even the head of the school of Taoism, Xiaomeng, was also Dustless's prisoner. Her status was very miserable and awkward. A while ago, Xiaomeng was still a brilliant genius, and her status in the Qin kingdom was not lower than Dustless's. She was deeply trusted by Ying Zheng and Fu Su, but now she suddenly stood on the side of the rebels. Dustless really felt that a woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. He did not know what Xiaomeng was thinking and what she was planning. You want the school of Taoism to be affiliated with the school of Yin Yang. Dream on. Xiaomeng snorted when she heard that, and then she gave an answer that made Dustless want to cry. Annexing the school of Taoism. Annexation was possible, but what about the benefits of the school of Taoism? Dustless was a typical egoist. Not only would it not benefit him, but it would also cause a lot of trouble. Dustless could not arouse the slightest interest. If I want to annex the school of Taoism, what do you think those good-for-nothings can do? Not only would annexing the school of Taoism bring no benefits, but also a lot of disadvantages. Dustless was naturally not interested in such a thankless task. Humph, if you want to kill me, just do it. Cut the crap. Even though Xiaomeng had been captured as a prisoner, her words still revealed her unchanging arrogance. Wu Chen, who was under her, was rather annoyed and gloomy. This woman is a little too cold. You have a tough temper, Xiaomeng. You have to understand the gap between us. I am the real master of the school of Yin Yang, and you are just a prisoner. If you want to live, you'd better lower your head and beg me. Chapter 2001. Lower my head. When she heard this, Xiaomeng smiled and said softly, "Don't you think that's ridiculous? You want me to lower my head? Dustless, you're still too weak." Hee. Unexpectedly, Dustless only smiled casually. His interest was suddenly piqued. Interesting. I like people who refuse to submit to me. That's what makes it interesting. You bastard. Xiaomeng's gaze was slightly gloomy. She suddenly had a bad feeling about this. Combined with Dustless's way of doing things, it was impossible for her to think in a positive direction. Some bored people of the Jianghu even gave Dustless an appropriate nickname, the Smiling Tiger. They hinted that Dustless was a treacherous person who liked to play tricks. Xiaomeng, from now on, you're Taoist sect. Dustless looked at Xiaomeng mockingly and said loudly, "This world is too small. The Yin Yang sect is enough. There won't be any Taoist sect." Nonsense. When she heard this, Xiaomeng immediately stood up and glared at him. It's not up to you to decide whether the Taoist sect exists or not. You don't have the right. What a joke. Dustless sneered. The victor will plunder the loser. This has been the nature since ancient times. The victor will step on a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood to show off. This is fate. Now, you're saying that I don't have the right. Is this something a loser like you should say? Get your facts straight. Also, I forgot to tell you earlier. There's no Taoist sect in this world anymore. Dustless ignored Xiaomeng's stunned gaze and said bluntly, the Taoist sect and the Yin Yang sect belong to the same sect. It's normal for them to merge. It's just that the name of this sect has changed. What's it called? When she saw Dustless's evil smile, Xiaomeng felt even more uneasy. Do I have to tell you that? Of course, it's the Yin Yang sect. From now on, there's only one sect master, and that's me. Dustless suddenly pointed at himself with his thumb and said coldly, you don't have a choice. Now, hurry up and call me sect master. Dustless smiled as he looked at Xiaomeng. His eyes were filled with anticipation. Xiaomeng's bitter expression was especially interesting to Dustless. In your dreams. Xiaomeng coldly replied. However, her eyes were a little dim. Even though she verbally protested against Dustless's actions, Xiaomeng couldn't deny that she had no means to resist Dustless. After all, she was a prisoner now, so what right did she have to fight Dustless? So stubborn. Dustless frowned. Soon after, he coldly said, Xiaomeng, it's fine if you resist me, however, there are many disciples in your Taoist sect. I believe that no one will object to finding a groundless reason to start a massacre. You bastard, why are you so insidious? Upon hearing this, Xiaomeng could no longer maintain her calm. Although she was not afraid of death and was not afraid of Dustless's threats, wouldn't Xiaomeng be a great sinner if the foundation of Taoism that had lasted for hundreds of years was destroyed? She couldn't accept it. That's right. In your dreams, you still want to annex the 100 schools of thought. Wishful thinking. Chu Nangong also sternly replied, no one will agree with your actions. Don't even think about doing whatever you want. Old thing, just say it if you want to die. I don't mind sending you to heaven. Upon hearing this, Dustless's expression turned cold. Suddenly, a bright light appeared at the tip of his finger. Then, under Chu Nangong's shocked gaze, a dazzling light shot out from his finger. Pfft! A charred bloody hole appeared in his head. Soon after, he breathed his last. His eyes were wide open as if he didn't expect Dustless to kill someone without saying anything. You can refuse to accept it, but the price you have to pay is your life, just like Chu Nangong. Dustless's gaze swept past Lu Ji and the others. He coldly ordered, Moon Goddess, suppress all of them. From now on, the 100 schools of thought will only have the Yin-Yang sect. Although the name was a little strange, it wasn't the main point. After all, the 100 schools of thought had disappeared, and Dustless's mission had come to an end. Now that the Yellowstone Heavenly Book and the 7 mansions of the Azure Dragon were in his hands, it was time to leave this world. As for the Moon Goddess and the others, Dustless had also told them about his background. Although they were shocked when they heard that Dustless was going to take them away, they showed great interest. The 3,000 universes, the 3,000 worlds, and all living things were curious about the unknown mysterious world. As for the matter of the Qin Kingdom, after the 100 schools of thought disappeared, it was completely peaceful. The saying that heroes use their martial arts to break the rules was not said casually. After some sects disappeared, those arrogant martial artists also disappeared without a trace. All the disputes in the past naturally disappeared. By the way, take it. Dustless suddenly picked up Yun Zhongjuan's jade bottle and poured out dozens of elixirs of immortality. He handed them to the women and said, You can't use the things that I use, so I can only give you these elixirs of immortality. I don't know if they can make you immortal, but they can definitely keep you young forever and prolong your life. The Moon Goddess and the others looked at the blood-red elixirs and were very touched. After all, the elixirs of immortality were not ordinary things. For Dustless to give them such precious things, it was not a big deal. At least, they were sure that Dustless cared about them very much. Chapter 2002. In the Systems World. Dustless handed over the collected Yellowstone Heavenly Book and Azure Dragon's 7 mansions to the Systems Consciousness, Ling-Er. In reality, he really didn't know what the use of these things was. The mission is completed. If you have any conditions, feel free to state them. Seeing Dustless handing over the 2 antiques, Ling-Er revealed a rare smile. Cough cough cough. That's not necessary. Most of the credit for me being able to reach where I am today is due to you. Dustless chewed on a piece of grass in his mouth, as if he didn't intend to accept Ling-er's benefits. Humans must know how to be grateful. A drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring. But, however, this scene didn't last long. Dustless's face suddenly changed, and he said with a smirk, "But if I don't take your benefits, isn't that not giving you face? What if I hurt your self-esteem? I'm not that kind of person." After all, you still want benefits. You can just say it. There's no need to tease others like this. Hearing this, Ling-er was secretly angry. Although she had seen Dustless's shamelessness a long time ago, at this moment, she was still shocked. Can I really agree to any condition? It feels like I found a wishing machine. Dustless whispered in disbelief, and then immediately said bluntly, "Make me as powerful as you." "Sorry, it's difficult to do. Also, forcibly increasing a person's level is harmful." Ling shook her head. It seemed that he wasn't omniscient and omnipotent. "Then I have no wish." Waving his hand, Dustless intended to postpone indefinitely. Maybe in the future, it would be useful, but in reality, it was just a casual remark. "Then I'll just muddle through." Ling-er was secretly delighted. "Ha! Muddle through. You think I'm at your beck and call. Mutual benefit is the essence of the mission. If there are no benefits, tell me, who will work for you? You want to cheat me of my wages. If you're so powerful, why don't you go to heaven?" Dustless's spittle flew all over the sky. Ling-er was choked speechless by his words. "We'll talk about it later. Let me think about what I need in the future, then I'll come and find you." Dustless snorted, "Send me to the next world. I knew you wouldn't act until you see the rabbit. How could you just leave it like that?" Ling-er smiled bitterly and sighed at how naive she was. How could an egoist be as charitable as a good person? It would be a miracle if the heavens didn't give him more interest. Caw caw caw. With a light wave of her hand, a ripple appeared in the void. Then, a weak black hole expanded and quietly formed a stable spatial tunnel. Plop! Dustless went in like a stone thrown into the sea, and there was no more movement. In the pitch-black night, police sirens were everywhere, and the clamor of human voices filled the night sky. "It's really miserable. Who gave those bastard ghouls the right to live in the world? Damn it, why is there such a monster? They are not even as valuable as domestic animals. More than domestic animals, it is a waste for them to live under the air. Domestic animals can fill their stomachs, but we humans can only fill their stomachs." At the corner of the alley, a large number of ordinary citizens gathered, looking at the blood all over the ground, and the police who often talked about the word ghouls. They all walked away with a look of horror and disgust. To some extent, ghouls were the natural enemies of humans. If they wanted to live, they must eat humans. Other food was disgusting in the mouth of ghouls. This also caused the fight between the two. Which human was willing to let themselves become the food of ghouls? At the same time, the hunger of ghouls was equivalent to hell, and they had to eat humans in order to survive. From the starting point, there was no right or wrong between the two. To put it simply, it was a war that had to be fought for survival. Ouch, it hurts. In the gloomy alley, there was a sound of a headache, and then Dustless with a blurred face slowly walked out. When he saw a large number of people in front of him, he was about to ask where he was, but a large number of policemen pointed their guns at Dustless. "Stop, don't move." The appearance of Dustless immediately caused panic. The humans fled in all directions, and even used all their strength. In an instant, the crowd disappeared without a trace. I seem to have heard them talking about the word, ghouls. Did they also think that I was the kind of monster that ate human flesh? Dustless muttered in his heart, and immediately said loudly, "Listen to my explanation, I am a human, not clang. However, without giving Dustless the opportunity to speak and explain, a dense bullet swept over. There is no doubt that he is a ghoul. Go and contact CCG to support us. A large number of bullets fell on Dustless, but they did not pierce Dustless's skin. It was impossible for humans to have such a hard skin. This group of policemen also inferred that Dustless's identity was a ghoul. Only the skin of ghouls could have such a defense. You are a group of brain dead. I disdain to slaughter the weak human beings. Since you want to die, I will send you to heaven to visit God, then I am too inhumane. Dustless's face gradually became cold, his pupils accelerated, and the boundless black fire suddenly came. Amaterasu. In an instant, the group of policemen was burned by the sudden black fire, and even the bodies were not left. You are reckless. In the next life, be smart, don't aim at the top predators that are far more dangerous than ghouls. Chapter 2003. Blind Thing. After whispering, Dustless left. His head was dizzy all the way, falling from a height of tens of thousands of meters. The taste was really uncomfortable. Until now, Dustless's head was still a little stuffy, and he couldn't find the direction. The 20th District? Suddenly he saw a huge sign with the words, "The 20th District," clearly written on it. This is interesting. A pillow is sent when I want to sleep. From now on, this is my place. Dustless muttered to himself, and at the same time, he gently glanced at the several gloomy figures behind him. He just smiled contemptuously and walked away. The ghouls were not worth mentioning. The more he knew about them, the more self-righteous this group of cannibal demons were. What is that kid's eyes? Is he looking down on us? Suddenly, they saw Dustless's contemptuous eyes, and several ghouls who were wandering in the alley glared at him. Hey, don't worry about that idiot, it won't take long for him to be killed. He doesn't even wear a mask, he doesn't know how to write the word, death. There are cameras all around here, and it won't take long for, White Dove, to find trouble with that kid. It seems to be here. In the early morning of the next day, Dustless found a coffee shop with a good environment according to the location in his memory. Looking through the window, the interior of the coffee shop was quite elegant and classy. The store manager seems to be called Yoshimura Gikusen, nicknamed Owl, is an SSS class ghoul, and his strength seems to be good. He also has a daughter, One-Eyed King, who is also an SSS class ghoul, Dustless murmured, trying to recall the past about Yoshimura Gikusen. He didn't even find the figures coming from the side. Many people showed greedy eyes to Dustless, like hungry beasts. What coffee shop? It is obviously a den of thieves. Roughly glancing at all the people who passed by, Wu Chen smelled a strong smell of blood from them. Although they concealed it quite cleverly, it was still full of flaws. On one side, they kept calm, but on the other side, they looked at Dustless hungrily. What is this if not a ghoul? Young man, at this moment, a rather friendly voice suddenly sounded. Then, a slightly old figure slowly walked over. His eyes were closed the whole time, and he looked very strange. It's you. Dustless raised his head slightly and saw the owner of the coffee shop, Yoshimura Gyozen. Young man, do you know me? Manager Yoshimura Gyozen's tone changed. I know you, but you don't know me. Dustless muttered in his heart. His eyes moved and he immediately said, I heard that the coffee here is pretty good. The store manager's reputation is widespread. That's all thanks to the guest. If you don't mind, come in for a cup of coffee. Kozen Yoshimura smiled slightly. He was very humble and friendly. It was hard to imagine that he was the legendary SSS class ghoul. Thank you. Dustless nodded. His impression of the store manager had increased. A group of ghouls saw that the store manager invited Dustless as a guest. They were a little dazed. They didn't know what the old man was doing. This guy's breath obviously belonged to a human. Why would he pull a human into a coffee shop full of ghouls and wait for him to be dismembered? Hey, I want to see which idiot thinks that his teeth are powerful and wants to eat me. His ambition is not small. Seeing everyone's greedy eyes, Dustless sneered. This was a predator's instinct, just like humans would always be hungry when they saw delicious food. What is your name? Taking Dustless to a table with few people, Yoshimura Gyozen immediately asked, "What do you want to drink?" "Bring the best and most expensive one." Dustless put on a look of "I am very rich" and signaled Yoshimura Gyozen to bring all the good things. "Kaneki, look, this guy is a nouveau riche." The two students on the other side, seeing Dustless's appearance, immediately complained. Lower your voice, don't be heard by others." The black-haired boy called Kaneki pulled the blonde boy's clothes. "Maybe we will be banned from entering in the future." These two people were Kaneki Ken and his good friend Yongjin Hideyoshi. There are really a lot of delicious food. At the same time, a woman with purple curly hair quietly entered the coffee shop. This person had glasses, a delicate and mature appearance, and revealed a faint charm. It was just that such a beautiful girl was almost the same as the previous ghouls. Looking at the human's eyes, inadvertently greedy, even more intense than other ghouls. But perhaps because of her superior strength, this person could perfectly suppress the hungry wildness of ghouls. Ordinary people could hardly feel any special temperament. 99% of humans may think that this person was a human. However, since it was 99%, it meant that some people could still see it, such as Dustless. He just looked at her rather bored, and then drank coffee by himself. "It's really good." The mellow taste lingered in the mouth for a long time. Dustless's eyes suddenly brightened. "Thank you for your compliment, please enjoy." Yoshimura Gyozen nodded, then turned and left. At the same time, he frowned and glanced at the purple beauty who came to Dustless. Then he was silent again, his eyes were fluctuating, and no one knew what he was thinking. "This handsome guy, do you mind if I sit here?" The purple girl showed an enchanting smile and looked sincere. However, Dustless's one sentence made her almost go berserk. "Kamishiro, rise. I mind eating at the same table with you. I am a clean freak. You can sit elsewhere. I am allergic to women with strong taste." Dustless looked disgusted, and very impolitely asked her to leave. "You." Hearing this, Kamishiro Rise's eyes trembled and looked at Dustless. This was the first time that she took the initiative to talk to someone and was rejected, especially Dustless's reason made her particularly angry. "What do you mean by you are a clean freak?" Dustless's words didn't mean that she was dirty. Chapter 2004. How dare you? Kamishiro Rise smiled, and she was almost unable to breathe because of Dustless's words. Damn guy. Looking around, Kamishiro Rise found that all the ghouls' eyes had changed. They were whispering to each other, and the corners of their mouths had a slight arc. They wanted to laugh but did not dare to laugh. The 20th district was originally a relatively stable area, but since the appearance of Kamishiro Rise, this short piece was destroyed. She had a tail number of gluttony. For the general ghouls, they only needed a human body for about a month, but the amount of food needed by Kamishiro Rise was several times more than other ghouls in a month, and this was only the amount of food for a week. Therefore, Kamishiro Rise's behavior also attracted the attention of CCG. Let's just kill this kid here. Kamishiro Rise's eyes were green, staring at Dustless who was calmly drinking coffee. Her gem-like eyes were all replaced by hostility. Anyway, there were only a few humans in the coffee shop, and most of them were ghouls. "Miss, the gentleman just left, do you mind sitting here?" At this time, the store manager, Yoshimura Gyozen, suddenly interrupted, pointing to the empty table in the corner, and said kindly, "Today, all your expenses are free of charge." Humph. Hearing this, Kamishiro Reese just snorted heavily, and immediately left with a cold face. She had already remembered Dustless in her heart. This arrogant little devil was simply looking for death. I will teach you a lesson tonight. Kaneshiro Rise glanced at Wu-chin unwillingly. She could only angrily sit at the position designated by the store manager and drink her coffee alone unhappily. Since Yoshimura Gyozen intervened, it meant that he did not agree with Kamishiro Reese to fight here. It was not that he sympathized with Dustless, but this coffee shop was the only shelter for ghouls to communicate. Kamishiro Reese's killing here will inevitably be exposed, and so many years of effort will inevitably be wasted. This young lady. Suddenly, Kaneki Ken came over with embarrassment. His cheeks were slightly red, and he was very shy. What's up? After being attacked by Dustless, Kaneshiro Rise did not give Kaneki Ken a good look. I'm in a bad mood. Kid, please don't bother me. Hearing this, Kaneki Ken stammered for a long time without saying anything. He lowered his head in shame and was extremely embarrassed. This idiot, isn't he courting death by striking up a conversation with someone in a fit of anger? Dustless couldn't help but be speechless when he saw this scene. Kaneki Ken, this kid, is unbelievably naive and doesn't know how to deal with people at all. In the original work, Kaneki Ken was in love, so he went to hook up with Kamishiro Rise. As a result, it was a tragedy. After a series of changes, he became a ghoul, and his fate was extremely twisted. Plop. At this moment, a few burly men broke in and kicked the door to pieces. Seeing the burly men who barged into the coffee shop, the customers who were drinking coffee with their heads lowered all frowned. After carefully looking at these people, everyone's expression changed greatly. These people were all wearing uniforms and holding briefcases, and they surrounded Dustless fiercely. White pigeons. Some ghouls who were drinking coffee had tight cheeks, showing caution and fear. White pigeons and ghouls were two natural enemies. Store manager, the beautiful blue-haired girl's face was slightly cold, and her fists were clenched. Toka, don't act rashly. Reaching out and pulling the girl's right arm, the store manager Yoshimura Kozen said calmly, "This group of white pigeons is not coming for us. That guy may have caused a lot of trouble. We don't need to intervene in the infighting between humans." Ha 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 ha, there is a good show to watch. Kaneshiro Rise grinned when she saw the situation. She just sighed in her heart. It's a pity that the delicious food will become a ghost under the hands of white pigeons. What's up? I don't know you. Dustless also looked at these people with a tangled face. He just killed a few policemen yesterday, and that group of people didn't listen to his explanation first. They took the initiative to shoot at Dustless. They deserve to die. Now, please come with me and cooperate with the investigation. The leader looked unkind. Perhaps it was not because of the large number of people, he had already made a move. When he heard the words, Dustless just glanced at the group of CCG faintly, and immediately tasted the coffee. After finding that the taste was a bit bitter, he took a spoonful of sugar. It tastes good. After taking a sip, Dustless smiled and nodded, completely ignoring the white pigeons that surrounded him. Bastard! When he heard the words, the leader of the white pigeons suddenly became angry, and sneered in his heart, "We are here to ask you to cooperate with the investigation. You dare to ignore us and drink coffee alone. Where did you get the courage to be so reckless? Boy, didn't you hear me clearly?" The leader of the white pigeons said with a little anger. You. Dustless finally turned his head and glanced at the group of white pigeons, and asked uninterestedly, "Really, have you seen a person communicate with a group of ants? Both sides are not in the same field, aren't you asking for trouble by talking nonsense? Arrest him." The leader of the white pigeons, who couldn't stand it anymore, waved his hand, and the men around him rushed over. "You're asking for death. When he saw the situation, Dustless's face became angry, and a golden sword suddenly appeared in his hand, and he swung it. Poochie! 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 The divine sword that could cut iron like mud was unstoppable, and it killed everyone in an instant. In less than 5 seconds, several people were killed instantly, and their bodies were all horribly dismembered, and the smell of blood was pungent. This is bad. When he saw the situation, the shop owner Yoshimura Karma was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. The white pigeons died in his coffee shop, how could he stay out of it? Whether it had anything to do with him or not, he would be implicated because of it. Chapter 2005. This scene was too shocking. It only took a few seconds to kill the white dove. Although it was a short time of a few seconds, it was difficult for the insiders to see the knack. This fellow is an out-and-out bloody butcher. When he kills someone, he won't be affected at all. His expression won't change, and he won't feel any discomfort. When that murderous aura is released, the person is already dead. The store manager was calm on the surface, but he was shocked in his heart. Dustless's calmness in killing people was beyond his reach. The moment the murderous aura appeared, people were already dead. He could hardly see the process of killing people. It was too fast. Goodbye. Thank you for your hospitality. Suddenly standing up, Dustless left a large piece of gold and retreated. The style of the local tyrant was undoubtedly revealed. He had the ability of Gate of Babylon, and the gold was inexhaustible. Cough cough cough. Seeing this, the store manager Yoshimura Kozan's face was slightly stagnant. The white dove of CCG died here. His antique coffee shop certainly could not stay out of it. It would inevitably be involved. It was necessary to cooperate with the investigation. In case those people whose nose was sharper than dogs found out the reason, the final loss would be heavy. However, Yoshimura Kozan had no way to stop Dustless, unless he fought with him and captured him. Anything else? Turning his head and glancing at Yoshimura Kozan, Dustless said indifferently, "The coffee is good, it's really surprising. If I have time in the future, I will visit this shop again." "Thank you, our shop is grateful." Looking at the back of Dustless, Yoshimura Kozan finally smiled and watched Dustless leave. "Store manager, how long will you let him leave like this? This guy killed the white dove in our place. It will bring unnecessary trouble to our coffee shop." Kirishima Tuka saw the store manager standing still and couldn't help but worry. And this guy is really strange. He is a ghoul, but he doesn't have that kind of unique aura. He is definitely a human, but is there such a powerful human? He can kill the white dove at will. Is this something a human can do? Humans are so powerful, their ghouls have long been eliminated. Dong Xiang, this guy might have already recognized us. The store manager's words were amazing and wise. At the moment when he opened his eyes, his scarlet eyes were filled with surprise, and he explained, "The surprise," he said, "I am afraid he is very surprised that ghouls can make such a different coffee." What? Kirishima Tuka was shocked when she heard this, and immediately said in disbelief, "But we haven't been exposed. Are you trying to say that you didn't expose your identity?" That's enough. For some experts, just a few subtle movements are enough to figure out their identities. Yoshimura Gyozen said faintly, but he was not worried or afraid. "Store manager, you don't seem to be afraid of him snitching." Kirishima Tuka was quite surprised by the store manager's calmness. In the past, when this kind of thing happened, he would kill decisively. Scared? There was no need for that. He himself is the enemy of the white dove. He can't even protect himself. If he snitches, he will definitely be caught. Our top priority should be how to deal with the white dove, who died here, instead of worrying about what the guy will do in the end. Time flies, and a day passed in a blink of an eye. The sky was quickly occupied by the night, and the cold darkness shrouded the entire 20th district. Ao 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 ao. In some alleys, the piercing howls of wolves were heard, which made people shudder. Really, you have been following me for a few hours. There is no one here. Should you come out? Miss Kaneshiro Rise, your patience is really admirable. Somewhere in an empty, inaccessible area, it was dark all around and filled with endless coldness. They could only see the vague figures with the help of the dirty street lights. Ta-ta-ta, in the stinky alley on the left, there was the sound of high-heeled shoes twisting. Yo! Your agility is really something to be proud of. It's superhuman. A lazy and enchanting voice gradually followed the footsteps, and then Kaneshiro Rise quietly walked out with a face full of desire. Her eyes had already turned into terrifying, Herculean eyes, and she was still drooling. She looked at Dustless with a greedy face. This place belonged to the dead zone where people were absent-minded. There was no need to continue pretending. Do you think I am the prey you are talking about? Glancing at Kaneshiro Rise, Dustless shook his head. Why are you so stupid to walk into the trap? Are both species so crazy for food? You know that you are going to die, but you are still persevering. How stupid. Do you think the white dove has become lawless after killing a few minions? You are just a human, but you are so arrogant. Kaneshiro Rise's face was cold. Caw caw caw. A large number of strange red tails suddenly swept out from behind her. They were very thick, and they were Kaneshiro Rise's Kagun. Go to hell. Immediately afterward, Kaneshiro Rise's cheeks were cold, and the dense Kagun was like a cannonball. When ghouls throw away their disguise, their greedy and ugly cheeks are exposed, especially in the face of humans. This face is really disgusting. Dustless glanced at the crazy Kaneshiro Rise, and an unparalleled attack suddenly came. Someone wanted to kill him, and it would be an idiot to be merciful. Amaterasu. He blinked his eyes slightly, and the thick Kagun instantly burned with black flames. What is this thing? At the moment of contact with the black flame, Kaneshiro Rise's face suddenly changed. She saw the black flame of destruction spread wildly at an extremely fast speed, and it was about to swallow her body. Chapter 2006. Urgent notice, the 2005 chapter was uploaded as an abandoned chapter. The author went out to do something, so he didn't have time to read it. Sorry, it has been modified. Everyone can read it again. Sorry. Black flame, what is this? Kunk. Weren't those things kept in the box? And this kind of kunk has never been heard of before. Seeing that her body was about to be devoured, Kaneshiro Rise panicked. Her expression turned cold as she did something that stunned everyone. Puchi. In order to avoid being swallowed and annihilated by Amaterasu, Kaneshiro Rise even abandoned her Kagun. Your strength is not good, but this decisiveness is admirable. Dustless nodded. It was rare to praise this gluttonous woman. If she did not sacrifice her Kagun, Kaneshiro Rise would also be swallowed. Your compliment makes me unhappy, but it makes me angrier. Hearing Dustless's praise, Kaneshiro Rise only became more and more gloomy, and then the broken Kagun erupted again. The new Kagun swayed strangely, like a dangerous giant python. This regeneration ability is quite fast. Dustless was quite surprised. He had heard that ghouls could regenerate, but now it was the first time to see it. It was quite interesting. Kaneshiro Rise, come on. Whoosh. Kaneshiro Rise was an SS-class ghoul. How could she tolerate this kind of provocation? She suddenly roared, and there was a flash of blood in the void, and then Kaneshiro Rise disappeared. Give me your body, young man. Almost instantly, Kaneshiro Rise rushed to the back of Dustless. The speed was like thunder walking in a straight line. It was extremely shocking, and the big mouth with sharp teeth that exuded the smell of blood. In a flash, she bit Dustless's neck. "Thank you for your hospitality." With a sneer, Kaneshiro Rise couldn't wait to bite down. Kakaka, suddenly, a strange cracking sound was heard. Kanzaki Rishi was in so much pain that her expression changed drastically. She suddenly realized that her teeth were broken and turned into powder. What kind of joke is this? Is this guy's skin made of steel? No, it's made of diamond. Kamishiro Rise wanted to cry but no tears came out. Her fangs could not pierce Dustless's skin at all. The fragrant food was right in front of him, but it was as if his mouth had been sealed and he couldn't eat. He could only forcibly endure the tempting fragrance. How could this not be miserable? This is not a diamond, it's just armament hockey. Dustless turned his head slightly to look at Kamishiro Rise, and a powerful energy fluctuation burst out from his body. Shinra Tensei. Bang! Being so close to Dustless, Kamishiro Rise was naturally unable to avoid the impact of the repulsive force and was instantly sent flying. Caw caw caw. Kamishiro Rise's body smashed the wall, and her internal organs were shaken. This kind of injury was not so fatal to her, but Kamishiro Rise's self-confidence was hit hard. She was an SS-class ghoul, but she couldn't even deal with a human without kunk. Although this human was evil, this was not an excuse. Oh 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 oh! A sharp roar came out from Kamishiro Rise's mouth, and the atmosphere around was even more gloomy and strange. Are you angry from embarrassment? Seeing the red eyes, Dustless's body was full of light and disappeared in an instant. Where is he? The crazy cheeks suddenly solidified. Kamishiro Rise looked around and didn't see Dustless's shadow for a long time. Of course, behind you. Suddenly there was a joking voice behind her. Kamishiro Rise just turned her head, but what she got back was a big foot. Boom! Her abdomen was hit hard. Kamishiro Rise stepped back again and again. Her whole stomach was sunken, and even the human flesh that she had eaten before was almost vomited out. You smelly man with a black heart, you even hit a woman. Kamishiro Rise knelt on one knee. Her face was ugly. Dustless's kick had a big impact on her. Her whole body was trembling and could not continue to move. Woman. It should be a female ghoul. Glancing at Kamishiro Rise with disdain, Dustless sneered, a female ghoul who tried to eat me. It is already a great mercy that I didn't cut her into pieces. Kamishiro Rise, you have to know how to be grateful, instead of looking at me with this expression of gritting teeth. You bastard. Hearing this, Kamishiro Rise was furious. The Kagun behind her flashed a dangerous red light again, turning into countless thrilling fatal attacks, like a poisonous dragon breaking out of the cage, madly rushing to Dustless. Only Kagun. This attack method is too monotonous. No wonder it was suppressed by CCG's White Dove. If it were me, you ghouls would have already been destroyed by the race. Dustless shook his head disapprovingly. In fact, ghouls did not have much advantage. The most dangerous thing of ghouls was their Kagun, but as long as their Kagun was destroyed, they could no longer use their Kagun as a weapon. Kamishiro Rise, let me show you something interesting. There was a deep smirk at the corner of his mouth. Dustless's eyes turned into the Scarlet Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and the pentagram pattern was suffocating. Don't you like to eat people? I will be a good person this time, and let you eat enough. Tsukimi. For any living being, Genjutsu is fatal, especially for those who don't understand the power of the Sharingan. Their resistance is even less. Almost in an instant, Kamishiro Rise was hit by Genjutsu with a blank face. Then she crawled on the ground and shivered. It looked like she had experienced a huge disaster, and her pretty face kept sweating. Chapter 2007. Although she was aware of the danger of the Scarlet Eyes, Kaneshiro Rise still looked at Dustless blankly. Her face was dull and confused, and she looked at Dustless with vigilance. But when the word Tsukimi fell, everything changed. Plop. Looking at Dustless's eyes, those two simple words contained terrible magic power. Kaneshiro Rise fell to the ground in an instant, her body kept trembling, and cold sweat secreted from her pores like rain. Vomit. Kaneshiro Rise's throat kept vomiting, and she felt extremely uncomfortable. Everything in the world of Tsukimi was controlled by Dustless, and this time was as long as 24 hours. He could change everything in the world at will. He was the god of creation. Why do you show such a painful expression, Kaneshiro Rise? Dustless looked at Kaneshiro Rise with great confusion. He stared at Kaneshiro Rise, who had saliva on the corner of her mouth, and asked with a smile, "How is your appetite?" "After eating humans for 24 hours, the taste must be very good." "You bastard!" Kaneshiro Rise looked up at Dustless with difficulty and said with indignation, "You better be careful, you better kill me now, or I will definitely kill you." Although in the real world, only a simple second had passed, because of the control of Tsukimi, Kaneshiro Rise had spent a long 24 hours in the spiritual world. And in these 24 hours, Kaneshiro Rise had been eating human corpses non-stop. For the first time in her life, Kaneshiro Rise felt nauseous to human flesh, eating a kind of food without limit for 24 hours without stopping. Even ghouls would feel nauseous to human corpses. "Really, do you want to die? Then I will do as you wish." Dustless's face gradually turned cold. For a woman who wanted to kill him, if he continued to let her live, wouldn't he be looking for death? Although Kaneshiro Rise's strength had little impact on him, it was extremely stupid to leave a pest that could attack him. When it was time to kill, he must kill without mercy. Heaven Gathering Cloud Sword. The Glint Fruit's ability was activated, and a divine sword that could cut through iron like mud suddenly appeared in his hand. The sword emitted a scorching light, and even from a few meters away, Kaneshiro Rise could feel the aura of death. "This battle is too simple and boring. Am I really an SS class ghoul?" For the first time, Kaneshiro Rise questioned her own level. She did not think that she was an SS class ghoul. Instead, she was cleaned up by Dustless. "Wait, I have something to ask you." Seeing Dustless gradually approaching, Kaneshiro Rise looked up at the dead eyes and asked, "Are you a ghoul or a human? Whose side are you on?" "I'm not from either side." Faintly glancing at Kaneshiro Rise, Dustless said indifferently, "If I have to find a position for myself, then, ghouls and CCG's, White Dove, are more suitable to tremble under my feet. Both sides are not good things. I am neither a mutant nor a human." By the way, did you just say that I am a superhuman? I now feel that this name is quite appropriate. CCG's White Dove wanted to kill him. Dustless naturally did not have a good impression. Ghouls also wanted to eat him. These two groups were serious enemies, and it was more appropriate to destroy them all. Goodbye. The sharp edge of the heaven-gathering cloud sword fell on the head of Kaneshiro Rise. When it was about to cut her throat, a sudden change occurred. "It's really surprising. I didn't expect that there is such a powerful person in the 20th district. It's really interesting, kakaka." A sound of astonishment and shock suddenly rang out. At the same time, it was accompanied by a crisp caw-caw-caw sound, as if someone had broken a bone. It was terrifying and horrifying. "It's him." Kaneshiro Rise glanced at the figure in the dark and sneered, "Are you looking for death? I am not his opponent. You are an S-class scum, are you confident? Jason, hurry up and run for your life." Jason, Wuchen also mentioned the name of the strong man in a suit with his hands in his pockets. He snorted coldly and said, "If you kneel down and kowtow to me to apologize now, I can pretend that nothing happened and let you leave safely. Otherwise, I heard that you have a tendency to abuse others." This is very good. Have you ever been killed by 1,000 cuts? Dustless spat out cold air, and his face was filled with endless coldness. Although I don't know where you came from, and I don't know whether you belong to a human or a ghoul, but I advise, hey. Without waiting for Jason's voice to fall, Dustless seemed to be integrated with the sky and disappeared without a trace. Where did that brat go? Jason saw such a scene and couldn't help but be stunned. He disappeared just like that. Did he need to be so abnormal? It's bad, this time I may really kick an iron plate. Jason's back was cold. Taking away Kamishiro Rise was one of the tasks given to him by the organization. Of course, he couldn't just watch Kamishiro Rise fall. Poochie. Suddenly he felt a pain in his arm. Jason turned his head to look. His right arm was already bloody, and it was cut off from the shoulder. Jason, how do you feel? Next time it may be your head. Dustless, standing next to him, regardless of the stunned Jason, asked softly, You, an SS-class ghoul, are not my opponent. You, an S-class ghoul, came out to make a fool of yourself. Is it really appropriate? Are all the members of Aijairai Tree like this? You bastard. His means were cut off by Dustless. Jason was furious. If he continued to be silent, he would inevitably lose face in the future. His back suddenly erupted a large number of dense Kagun, wrapped around the only remaining arm, and did not hesitate to enter the half-Kagun state. Chapter 2008. TSK, it looks really scary. Staring at the ferocious face of Jason, Dustless deliberately put fear on his face, but the teasing tone was obviously deliberately teasing Jason. Go to hell. Jason's face was extremely distorted, and his eyeballs protruded outward, as if they could burst out at any time, and his arm wrapped with Kagun came full force. Armament hockey hardening. Dustless did not hide, and his dark skin instantly covered his whole body. Boom! A heavy punch fell on Dustless's cheek, and the ferocious Kagun was like a fangs, like an invisible big mouth, which could easily tear people's heads. Kakaka! However, when Jason's fist hit Dustless with full force, the latter was not hurt at all, but Jason couldn't stand the vibration from the movement of his arm, and his body was bounced back again and again. Even the strong Kagun was cracked because Dustless's skin was too hard, and it was messy like a spider web. Fuck. Seeing Dustless was hit by his full force, but his face was intact, Jason couldn't help but burst out swearing, and he couldn't help but yell in his heart, Who the hell is this guy? The gap is too big. Is he an SSS class ghoul? Even if he is an SSS class ghoul, he won't be fine. Jason sadly found that even if Dustless stood there and let him hit him, it seemed that he had no ability to hurt him. Right, in his eyes, a bright light suddenly flashed, and suddenly a plan came to his mind. Jason asked with a sincere tone, Are you willing to join our Aijairai Tree organization? With your strength, if you catch Kamishiro Rise, it will be a great achievement, and I am afraid you will become a high-level member of the organization. Is that all you want to say? Dustless glanced at Jason disappointedly and said sarcastically, I am not interested in your organization. Of course, if your boss is willing to give up the boss position under her, but I can reluctantly consider it. You bastard, no matter how arrogant you are, you should know when to stop. Hearing this, Jason was so angry that his nose was almost crooked. The Kagun on his back increased its output, and the thick blood-red Kagun kept getting thicker, and its strength seemed to be increasing. You're quite capable. He stared at Jason in astonishment. It was not difficult to see that this fellow's strength seemed to have room for improvement. Bring it on. Yawning lazily, Dustless's face was filled with disdain and annoyance. He purposely provoked Jason. The angrier a person was, the stronger he would be. Since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. The strong Kagun wrapped around Jason's entire arm, and his entire wrist became thicker. His tightly clenched fist was filled with explosive power. Go! Jason glared at Dustless with his fists raised high. Just as he was about to rush over, he suddenly turned around and ran away at the fastest speed he had ever run in his life, disappearing from Dustless's sight. Is this running for your life? After being in a daze for a while, Dustless only scolded until Jason disappeared without a trace. This cunning bug, he pretended to perish together with me, but in fact, he planned to run away. How clever. Ha ha ha, you just wait to be retaliated. Kaneshiro Rise was also stunned for a long time, and immediately noticed that she could not feel Jason's breath at all. Then she smiled. The next person who will retaliate against you may be their boss, just wait for your death. Do you mean the boss of Aojirai Tree? Hearing this, Dustless showed an unusual look of expectation. It seems to be the One-Eyed King. The SSS class ghoul, if she comes in person, isn't this more interesting? She will just walk into the trap like you. Don't tell me you're saying. Kaneshiro Rise stared at Dustless, and there was a very terrible idea deep in her heart. She asked, you deliberately let Jason go, right? You madman just want to attract the attention of the One-Eyed King, let them take the initiative to come to die, and kill them all. Do you want to fight against an organization alone? Who knows? Dustless shrugged, and a meaningful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and then he suddenly turned and left. Don't you plan to kill me? Seeing Dustless suddenly leave, Kaneshiro Rise, who was stunned, asked, I said I will retaliate against you. Hearing this, Dustless just turned his head and looked at her faintly, and then he immediately pointed to the sky with no expression, and then he lazily left again. What does this guy want to say? Seeing this, Kaneshiro Rise frowned, and at the same time, she subconsciously looked at the sky and saw a large number of falling steel pipes, and her pupils suddenly shrank and solidified. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A large number of steel pipes fell from the sky, and Kaneshiro Rise, who could not move her body, became a live target. Boom boom boom. A group of steel pipes all hit Kaneshiro Rise. If it was a normal situation, Kaneshiro Rise would naturally not care. The skin of the ghouls was extremely hard, and ordinary weapons could not hurt her at all, not to mention that Kaneshiro Rise was a top predator, SS class ghoul. But now it was different, she was tortured by Dustless's Tsukuyomi, and her body was seriously exhausted. Which bastard dares to plot against me? Leaving such a sentence, Kaneshiro Rise fainted. Jana Takahiro and Kotofuku, not far away, looking at Kaneshiro Rise who was fainted, Dustless looked up at the building dozens of meters high. A man wearing a white coat and looking kind and friendly was clearly visible, and of course, his experimental assistant Kotofuku. What should happen is still unavoidable. Through the powerful insight ability of Sharingan, Dustless also found the fainted black-haired boy, and he was unexpectedly familiar with Kaneki Ken. Chapter 2009. Some people are born with bad luck. Seeing the sad Kaneki Ken, Dustless was speechless. It could only be said that Kaneki Ken's life was too tragic. Even if the current thing had nothing to do with him, he was still unfortunately involved in it. It looks like the original work, Kaneki Ken is still going to be transformed into a ghoul. Occasionally seeing the bloody hole in Kaneki Ken's abdomen, Dustless estimated that even if Kaneki Ken was not attacked by Kaneshiro Rise, he still encountered some bad luck. Maybe he was stared at by other ghouls in the antique coffee shop and was finally rescued by Jana Mingbo. Forget it, it has nothing to do with me anyway. Taking a deep look at Jana Mingbo, Dustless turned and left. He was not interested in the transformation of ghouls, whether it was one-eyed or other types of ghouls, Dustless was not interested in them. But if this old man was looking for trouble, then don't blame Dustless for being ruthless. As for the strength of the old man, Urfu was unimaginably strong. In the future, he used overwhelming strength to hit the One-Eyed King, but it did not have any effect on Dustless. Who the hell is that guy? On the top of the building, Jana Mingbo held a camera in his hand, and the scene that came into his eyes was how Dustless crushed Kamishiro Rise. He directly used overwhelming strength to hit Kamishiro Rise, who was an SS-class ghoul. The two sides were completely different players in the same field. It was as simple as a giant bullying a baby. Where did this creature come from? It's so strange. Jana Mingbo was puzzled. If Dustless was a ghoul, he did not have the Kagun eyes that belonged to ghouls, and he did not even have the Kagun. He was almost no different from humans. But since when did humans become so powerful? He even crushed SS-class ghouls with bare hands. As a result, what's the use of White Dove? I really want to dissect his body. Seeing Dustless disappearing in the night sky, Jana Mingbo finally sighed. He just thought about this kind of thing. He was far from being able to do that. But it's good to give this video to CCG. Garner Mingbo smiled eerily. Dustless did not wear a mask like the other ghouls. It had to be said that he was extremely bold. Even the extremely powerful SSS-level ghouls, such as the store manager Yoshimura Karma and the One-Eyed King, did not dare to see people with their real faces. In this respect, Dustless was definitely the most bold. Time flew by like a white steed flitting by a crack. In the blink of an eye, a few days had passed. CCG's base camp. In the spacious and bright meeting room, a large number of people with suitcases gathered. The scene was extremely serious, and everyone's expression was unprecedentedly serious. Special ghouls like Arima Kisho, Shinohara Yukinori, and Maruta Tsuki all attended this meeting with great respect. And the one who was responsible for presiding over this meeting was CCG's boss, Washa Matsuri. Everyone, you have seen the video just now. What do you think of this bold guy? As the director, Washa Matsuri's face was heavy, his eyes flickered, and he was brewing anger. He actually crushed that big stomach king. The strength of this guy is not simple. Maruta Tsuki, one of the special investigators, looked at Dustless on the screen, and his old face was strange. But, what is this guy, a ghoul or a human? When Maruta Tsuki's words fell, it caused many ghouls investigators to resonate. For a while, the whole scene was noisy. Everyone was confused about the existence of Dustless. It was said that he was a ghoul, but there was no Kagun and Kagun. It was said that he was a human, but he did not need Kunk to crush SS-class ghoul Kamishiro Rise. This kind of existence was really puzzling. It was no wonder that Jana Mingbo couldn't wait to dissect Dustless. Quiet. Seeing the scene was noisy, Washa Matsuri, as the director, said very seriously with a straight face, "No matter what, this guy attacked the police and killed our CCG members. It is enough to see that this mysterious person has a great hostile attitude to us. Basically, we can judge that he is an enemy. So, I now decide to identify this person as an SSS-class ghoul and treat him carefully." Pointing to Dustless on the screen, Washa Matsuri said very coldly, "Even his danger level is more terrible than the SSS-class ghoul." What? Treat him as an SSS-class ghoul? After the scene was sluggish for a few seconds, the entire meeting suddenly exploded. So far, the SSS-class ghouls that appeared were rare, and the unkillable owl, who had disappeared for many years, was one of them. A few years ago, he was seriously injured by Arima Kisho, and his arms were cut off. Since then, few people had seen his trace. Quiet. Seeing that the younger brothers were talking again, the director and Washa Matsuri had to raise their voice. In this case, isn't it a bit hasty? This guy's origin is unknown. Although he killed our people, no matter how you look at it, he doesn't seem to be a ghoul. Rashly identifying him as an enemy is not worth the loss. The special investigator Kurapan Yen frowned and said. In his view, it was too rash to identify Dustless as an enemy in a hurry. It was equivalent to having a powerful enemy. Moreover, Dustless was not impossible to win over. Anyway, the other party was not like a ghoul, and there was no sign of eating people. Although Dustless killed a lot of white pigeons, he also seriously injured the S-Class ghoul Jason and the SS-Class ghoul Kamishiro Rise. At least, the current Dustless was at least neutral, and he did not help anyone. Arima Kisho always remained silent and did not join the debate like everyone else. His knuckles tapped on the table rhythmically as if he was thinking about something. This matter, I have reported it to the higher-ups. They decided to treat this guy as an SSS-class ghoul. Washimatsuri made the final decision, and his tone was unquestionable, which was the opposite of his usual gentle tone. Chapter 2010. If Dustless knew that CCG had a plan against him at this moment, he would definitely sneer at them. Not to mention other people, just the director who called Dustless as an SSS-class ghoul, Washimatsuri, was actually a ghoul. As the director of CCG, Washimatsuri was a ghoul. How strong can this group be? Moreover, the identity of Washimatsuri was quite mysterious, and it had a lot to do with some large organizations. Arima. What do you think? Washimatsuri had to look at Arima Kisho, hoping to win his support. Other CCG members did not seem to agree with his approach. Thinking about it, it was right to set up a strong enemy. If this person was really a ghoul, it would be fine, but Dustless was clearly a human being. Although it was very suspicious, wasn't it a typical behavior to identify him as a ghoul? Even if he is not a ghoul, but Arima Kisho was worthy of being Washimatsuri's good friend, or the two of them were the same kind, and Arima Kisho himself also had the blood of ghouls. He clearly knows that the person we send is CCG, but he still dares to attack openly. It is not wrong to identify him as an enemy. I don't think there is anything wrong with it. On the contrary, we must implement a plan against him. This kind of comprehensive strength is not weaker than the SSS-class ghoul. We must not ignore him. Arima Kisho expressed his position. Apparently he agreed with Washimatsuri's position. Hey, a group of special investigators could only sigh. Washimatsuri was the director of CCG, and Arima Kisho was known as the undefeated ghoul investigator. Both of them determined to treat Dustless as an SSS-class ghoul, so other people's opinions were not important. Investigate. You must find out the identity of that kid for me. He didn't even wear a mask. He dared to come out and provoke us openly. I admire his courage and courage. Time flies. 5 days passed in a blink of an eye. Failed. In the stronghold of the Aojairai Tree organization in the 24th district, a huge, ferocious monster looked down at Jason in front of it, and its hoarse tone was chilling. Its appearance was neither fish nor fowl, and its specific appearance could not be distinguished. Its entire body was made of hard bones, and the most striking thing was that it had a single blood-red eye on its face. Yes, Jason looked at the monster with fear. It was indeed the boss of the Aojairai Tree, the Cyclops King. Is the guy you mentioned very strong? The one-eyed king looked down at Jason. She was not angry. She had the absolute right to speak in the Aojairai Tree. Her strength was not covered, and the identity of the SSS-class ghoul was not bragging. Not bad. Jason felt an immense pressure that he had never felt before. He quickly nodded. Everyone knew how cruel and ruthless this superboss was. No wonder, CCG gave him such a high evaluation, even more than me. The one-eyed king suddenly understood. At this moment, she appeared in the form of Kakuja, and no one could recognize who she was. CCG. Jason looked at the one-eyed king strangely. To be honest, if he was not smart, he might have been killed by Dustless. The guy who fought with you has been determined to be an SSS-class ghoul. I am suddenly interested in him. Since he can be determined to be an SSS-class ghoul, and the director and Shuji Matsuri personally confirmed it, this guy is very unique. The scarlet eye on the one-eyed king's face was jumping, and it was filled with raging red light. It's a mistake. In a narrow alley, Dustless leaned against the wall and was worried. He glanced at the side. There were corpses everywhere, and conch scattered on the ground. They were all killed by Dustless. These past few days, no matter where Dustless stayed, there would be groups of white pigeons looking for trouble, so he had no choice but to start a massacre. Hundreds of people had died under Dustless's saber, and the number was still increasing. Really, if I continue to kill them like this, your CCG will be extinct sooner or later. Glancing at the corpses on the ground, Dustless sighed helplessly, and he could not help but regret it. If he had worn a mask to walk, he would not have caused so much trouble. Ao. At this moment, a disgusting smell suddenly came. It seemed that there were still living people. The vitality of this group of white pigeons is also strong enough. Dustless shook his head, the glinting fruit ability floated, and the sharp edge of the Kusanagi sword flashed again. When he was about to kill them, an unexpected figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Isn't this kid him? Dustless was shocked. He walked over and saw that it was not the CCG that was struggling, but a figure that Dustless did not expect. One of his eyes was jumping with red light, and his whole body was filled with a heart-wrenching madness. At this moment, he was working hard to eat the bodies of the CCG members killed by Dustless. Kaneki Ken. At the moment when he saw the one-eyed figure, Dustless was sure that he was Kaneki Ken. TSK, I didn't expect to meet you in such an occasion. Dustless secretly smacked his tongue. Seeing the crazy face of Kaneki Ken, he knew that this guy had not eaten human flesh for a long time. He was afraid that he was hungry. Dustless killed so many white pigeons, it was estimated that Kaneki Ken was attracted by the tempting smell of human beings. Ao. Seeing Dustless appear, Kaneki Ken rushed over instinctively, and his speed was quite fast. Get out of my way. Dustless frowned and immediately kicked him. The clumsy Kaneki Ken was not the opponent of Dustless. In an instant, he was kicked back again and again, and there were footprints on his abdomen. You don't know how to live. Sure enough, the group of bastards in CCG are not good things, and ghouls are also the same. Dustless stared at Kaneki Ken coldly. This kid was so insensible, he did not mind beating him up, and then giving him to CCG was a good choice. Chapter 2011. Dustless smiled evilly. CCG would definitely be very interested in Kaneki Ken's kind of acquired Cyclops ghouls. Maybe they would be excited to dissect Kaneki Ken. Ouch! Perhaps because of Dustless's kick, Kaneki Ken was also hurt. The crazy eyes gradually calmed down, and the roar was not as hoarse as before. It's you. Kaneki Ken was stunned, apparently recognizing Dustless who met in the coffee shop. Hey, it's me. You are so brave. Do you want to eat me? If I am eaten by you, I have lived for hundreds of years in vain. Staring at Kaneki Ken, whose face was full of blood stains, Dustless suddenly said, How does it taste? Is human flesh delicious? Human flesh. Hearing this, Kaneki Ken's face suddenly showed fear, and he subconsciously touched the corner of his mouth. Touching the wet blood stains, Kaneki Ken's whole body seemed to be electrocuted, suddenly twitching slightly, and his pupils suddenly enlarged several times, full of gray emptiness. Don't be so sad. Anyway, in my eyes, human beings and ghouls are the same kind of creatures. They are not good things, just jackals of the same tribe. When his voice fell, Dustless slowly forced Kaneki Ken. You are talking nonsense. How can I eat human flesh? I am a human. Kaneki Ken shook his head hard, as if he wanted to shake out everything he had just heard. Naive, I said that it doesn't matter to me whether you are a human or a ghoul. Dustless stared at Kaneki Ken and said, and even if you deny it, it is useless, the instinct in the bones will not lie. Hearing this, Kaneki Ken glared at Dustless, and he judged that Dustless was deliberately attacking him. Ta-ta-ta. At the same time, a very discordant sound of footsteps suddenly came into his ears. Dustless immediately closed his eyes, and his observation hockey quietly spread. Only 2 people. With a slightly cold expression, Dustless temporarily raised the heaven cluster cloud sword and slowly walked away. As for Kaneki Ken, who had a face of despair, he had already been disregarded. Manager, just leave the task of collecting food to me. The blue-haired girl blinked her watery eyes and looked at the old man in front of her with confidence. Dong Xiang, hearing this, Yoshimura Gyozen stopped walking. His squinted eyes suddenly opened, revealing a pair of dark red eyes. Recently, too many white pigeons have died. Sooner or later, a special investigator will appear. Who exactly did it? Dong Xiang had a bewildered expression as well, and she was rather hesitant. You too, a silent movement came from behind. Dong Xiang and the store manager, Yoshimura Gyozen, were both shocked. They subconsciously turned their heads, and their pupils constricted. The scarlet eyes flickered with evil afterglow, and the 3 slowly rotating magatama were far darker than the eyes of ghouls, and those who were stared at by them would feel like sitting on pins and needles. It turned out to be Miss Kirishima and manager Yoshimura. Dustless, who came out of the darkness, saw the 2 people holding a large suitcase in their hands. It was estimated that they were collecting food. Immediately, he pointed to the depths of the corridor. There are dozens of bodies there. If you don't mind the trouble, you can take them away. Dozens. Hearing this, both the store manager and Dong Xiang were stunned and asked subconsciously, killing so many people will inevitably attract the attention of the white pigeons. Also, is that your Kakuai? Kakuai. Dustless was stunned and realized that he was still in the state of 3 Tomo Sharingan. He immediately said, no. However, you can understand it as Kakuai. Such unscrupulous killing will attract the attention of the white pigeons sooner or later. The store manager, Yoshimura Gyozen, calmly persuaded, even if your strength is superior, facing the white pigeons as many as ants, you will be dismembered by them sooner or later. Oh, really? Dustless smiled faintly and said calmly, I think the manager said the opposite. No matter how many ants there are, when faced with something as hard as a rock, they won't be able to bite it. They will only seek their own destruction. At the end of his speech, Dustless's lips curled into a devilish smile. Could it be, the store manager, Yoshimura Gyozen, had a bad feeling in his heart? He looked at the place Dustless said and hurried over. As they got closer and closer to the place Dustless pointed out, blood flowed like a river, and the uncomfortable smell of blood became stronger and stronger. Even because the blood concentration was too high, even Yoshimura Kozen and Kirishima Tuka showed discomfort. This is, in the dark abandoned sky, seeing the corpses of the members of White Dove all over the ground, the store manager and Kirishima Tuka were both petrified on the spot, staring at this tragic scene dumbfounded. You killed so many white doves, it will destroy the peace and stability of 20th District. The store manager, Yoshimura Gyozen, frowned and looked at Dustless, his face was unhappy. He had managed to maintain the stability for so many years, and now it was about to be destroyed by Dustless. Naturally, he was unwilling. Peace. Stability. Saying such naive words, manager, I really doubt that you are an SSS class ghoul. Peace, this illusory thing, is made by fists. Isn't the peace of human beings based on the pain of ghouls? Dustless sneered at the manager's words and sneered, what's more, this group of bastards even treated me as an SSS class ghoul to be destroyed. I really can't find a reason to let go of the white doves. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I will pay them back 100 times. This was the philosophy of Dustless as an adult. Dustless was not the store manager. For hundreds of years, he had experienced all kinds of bizarre events. These were all unimaginable to the store manager. Peace, this fragile thing, could only be decided by fists. From the time he left the world of Naruto, Dustless understood such a simple truth. Chapter 2012. How do you know that I am an SSS class ghoul? Noticing that Dustless revealed his identity, Yoshimura asked in confusion. At the same time, his scarlet eyes were still jumping with anger, and the Kagun behind him was like a poisonous snake that came out of the cave, staring at Dustless. Well, hearing this, Dustless was speechless for a while. After all, he came from another world and knew too many secrets. After thinking for a few seconds, Dustless said, "There is no wall in the world that doesn't have a crack. I know very well who you have worked with before. A long time ago, when the store manager was young, she joined a special organization, V, and as a cleaner, she helped the organization clean up obstacles. Whether it was ghouls or humans, they were all the targets that the store manager eliminated. From then on, Fangtzu and Gongshan lived a stable life." Are you also a member of that organization? The store manager's cheeks changed dramatically when he heard the words. He was full of vigilance, and his whole face was tight. As an SSS class ghoul, Yoshimura could only be a cleaner of the V organization, which was enough to see the horror of the organization, and its strength was far stronger than the Aijairai tree. This is not. I just know some of their secrets. Dustless shook his head like a rattledrum, and immediately said bluntly, "To some extent, I am the enemy of V, we might as well cooperate." The store manager's eyes were shining, and he suddenly became interested. How to cooperate? The store manager Yoshimura knew that the people of the V organization would never easily let him go, and they would come to his door one day. It didn't matter if he died, but the store manager didn't want to implicate his daughter, Yoshimura-ite, who was the current boss of the Aijairai tree, the one-eyed king. "It's very simple, you will retire, and this, 20th district, will be my territory in the future." Dustless smiled and said, "You can find a place to live, and you will have no worries from now on." Hearing this, the store manager's mouth twitched a few times. Was Dustless cooperating? It was obviously a robbery. "You bastard, pay attention to your tone." Kirishima Tuka suddenly became angry, her eyes turned scarlet, and she stared at Dustless with a bad face. "If you dare to say that again, I promise that you will be beheaded." "Hey, you are really hot, be careful that you can't get married, Miss Kirishima." For the threat of the girl, Dustless just smiled. "You want to challenge me with your current strength, I can barely be 1,000 times stronger. Are you looking down on me?" Hearing this, Kirishima Tuka's back swept out magma-like Kagun, burning like a flame, quite spectacular. "That's enough, Dong Xiang. What he said is true. Stop it." Taking a look at Dong Xiang, the shop manager Yoshimura Karma said with a rare command. It was too easy for a ghoul who was evaluated as SSS class by CCG to kill Kirishima Tuka, and she would be killed in seconds even if she had no chance to fight back. Ouch! At the same time, the ferocious biting sound suddenly came, and attracted the attention of the three people for a moment. Everyone's eyes were cast at the same time, and they all frowned. Kaneki-ken, this kid can persist. What if he is hungry? Dustless touched his chin, and the corner of his mouth had a hint of playfulness and expectation. Why does he have the smell of rice? Sniffing gently with her nose, Kirishima Tuka's tone was confused, and then she suddenly remembered something and clenched her fists. Did he swallow rice? This is not the case, things are like this. Dustless shook his head and told the store manager and Kirishima Tuka in detail that Amami Rise attacked him, as well as being ambushed by Jana Maihiro and Kudofuku. He also told the current Kaneki-ken that he had been transformed into a one-eyed ghoul. Is he the college student whose organs were modified in the news? Kirishima Tuka looked at Kaneki-ken with a complicated look, and her clenched fists finally loosened. Toka, you go to prepare enough bodies, and then burn all the unusable ones. Remember to be careful, don't let the people of CCG find out that you died here. The store manager, Yoshimura Karma, told Kirishima Tuka seriously. It was not far from the antique coffee shop, and CCG's nose had always been very sensitive. What is your plan? The store manager looked at Dustless helplessly. If he let this guy go, sooner or later he will attract a large number of white pigeons, and the peace area he created will collapse. I don't have any ambition, I just believe in one principle: the land under my feet is mine. Dustless said, his calm tone was obviously not joking. You don't have ambition. Hearing this, the store manager, Yoshimura Karma, was speechless. The land under your feet is yours. This treaty is too overbearing. Doesn't it mean that if one day he goes to CCG's base camp, then CCG's site will be Dustless's? You can join my antique coffee shop temporarily. After thinking about it, the store manager only thought of such a way to restrain Dustless. The movement made by the SSS class ghoul was definitely not a small matter. If Dustless disappeared, the white pigeons may run to other areas to investigate Dustless's traces, but if they continue to make trouble, the entire 20th district will be unlucky. In a sense, the antique coffee shop that was the leader of the 20th district will inevitably be implicated by Dustless. The store manager did not want to help Dustless. From another point of view, the store manager was helping himself. Chapter 2013. And him, the store manager Yoshimura looked at Kaneki-ken, and the meaning was self-evident. You also join my antiques, otherwise you will be found by the white pigeons sooner or later, and the end is even more miserable. Staring at Kaneki-ken's one eye, the store manager could only sigh at the twists and turns of fate. For humans, becoming a ghoul was a nightmare, and now there was a unique Kaku eye, and it was impossible to stay out of it in the future. Kirishima took a frown and seemed to be unwilling. As for Dustless, he had an indifferent look. It was impossible for the store manager to not know about the legend of the one eye, and he would never let Kaneki-ken leave. Dustless's brows suddenly frowned, and the coldness on his face flashed away. Is there an intruder? At the same time, the store manager also found a slight movement. He was also an SSS-level ghoul, and his strength was naturally not comparable to Kirishima Tuka's. It's just a small fish. After a moment of silence, Dustless's 3-tomo Sharingan recovered its calmness, and he was unmoved. No matter who it is, people who see our real appearance must die. The store manager Yoshimura's eyes jumped with an unknown killing intent. Although he seemed to be more charitable, in the final analysis, he was an unkillable person who stepped on countless corpses. So many scumbags are wandering in my hunting ground, do they put me in their eyes? Lazy, but with a few murderous tone, then a young man with glasses and orange hair slowly came, and the two eyes were obvious. Your hunting ground. When he heard the words, Dustless glanced at him faintly, and the 3-tomo Sharingan that had disappeared appeared again. Boy, you say it again, I didn't hear it clearly, whose hunting ground is it? Of course, being stared at by Dustless's scarlet eyes, the man felt that his soul was trembling, and his throat seemed to be stuck by an invisible big hand, and it was difficult to continue to speak. What a strange eye. Is this really the Kaku eye of a ghoul? The store manager frowned and stared at the strange eyes intently. After feeling the darkness that came out of it, he could not help but change his face slightly, and he also felt extremely uncomfortable oppression. No wonder CCG's evaluation of him is SSS-level ghoul. The store manager suddenly realized that CCG seemed to look down on Dustless. Jean, when did this place become your hunting ground? Kirishima Tuka obviously knew this young man with orange hair, and her eyes flashed with hostility. This person was Nishio-jin. Don't think I don't know, that gluttony is dead. Nishio's tone, she said coldly, so now the 20th district is his territory. What an arrogant little brat. After hearing the words, Dustless slowly walked out of the dark corner. With the help of the vague moonlight, Nishio-jin saw the real appearance of Dustless. That gluttony was sanctioned by me. Since you said it's your territory, come on, let me see if you have more value than her. Dustless hooked his finger, and his mouth was full of evil intentions. It's you. After seeing the real face of Dustless, Nishio-jin's face suddenly flashed with panic. In the past few days, Nishio-jin was fortunate to see the scene of Dustless slaughtering the white pigeons. That unparalleled strength, no matter what level of investigator, it was just a hand and a knife, the slaughter process was less than a second. Cough, I still have something to do, goodbye. Looking at Dustless in fear, Nishio-jin was like a deflated ball, and she quickly fled desperately. Really, am I so terrible? Dustless was speechless, he didn't seem to bully Nishio-jin. Why was this girl more afraid than seeing the devil? Was it so exaggerated? Damn stinky pervert. After looking back and seeing that Dustless did not chase, Nishio-jin was relieved. She didn't know that Nishio-jin's heart had already called Dustless a super devil. Whether in the face of ghouls or humans, Dustless could always maintain a one-sided crushing momentum. Store manager, you don't need to kill him. Kirishima Tuka stared at Nishio-jin unkindly, her face was full of cold breath. Tuka, the essence of our antique coffee shop is to provide a safe shelter for the ghouls in the 20th district. It's okay to let that guy leave. Since he knows how to escape, it means that he is a smart person. He knows what to say and what should never be said. The store manager Yoshimura Kozan's face was indifferent, and then he left alone. This old man, Dustless couldn't help but look at Yoshimura Kozan speechlessly. To be honest, he really admired this calm SSS class ghoul. It was really shocking that a ghoul could be so kind. But it was precisely his kindness that led to his defeat in the future. All creatures, the survival of the fittest, this was the iron principle that would never change. The so-called peace and stability were completely controlled by the strong. Why can the store manager maintain the stability and peace in the 20th district? It was because he was an SSS class ghoul, and defeated all the ghoul organizations in the 20th district with overwhelming strength, which created a shelter dedicated to providing food for ghouls. So, if he was just an ordinary ghoul, would anyone listen to him? The answer was naturally no. However, the feeling of being under the same roof with a group of monsters who eat people is really a new experience. Seeing Kirishima Tuka collecting the corpses, Dustless's face was indescribably strange. Of course, Dustless's interested eyes also had an indescribable expectation. Chapter 2014. CCG's Base Camp. In the past few days, a large number of investigators were killed by the mysterious SSS class. We should be careful when searching. That guy is not something we can fight against. If it's not good, we should retreat. Two figures slowly walked out of the building that went straight into the sky. Both of them were wearing CCG uniforms and holding suitcases. It was Mado Wusu and his partner Amon Kotaro. The SSS class ghoul is really rare, especially this guy is really weird. We don't even know what his name is. Whether he is a human or a ghoul is still unclear. Mado Wusu looked at the photo in her hand, her face showed a bloodthirsty smile, and she went straight. The young man in this photo was Dustless. I understand. Amon Kotaro nodded heavily, looking at Dustless in the photo, he felt the pressure. In just a few days, as many as hundreds of ghoul investigators were annihilated by Dustless. It could be imagined how terrifying his strength was. The SSS class was well deserved. It's really boring. In the antique coffee shop, through the window, Dustless stared at the scenery of the outside world in a daze. His eyes were empty and hesitant. It was really strange to be with a group of ghouls who liked to eat human flesh. If everyone was the same, after all, they had a common language, but Dustless found that it was really difficult to integrate into this group. And some ghouls could smell the delicious human smell from Dustless, and even cast longing eyes to Dustless. Greed and covetousness were difficult to hide. Dustless was really not happy, and his chest was stuffy for a while. God is really blind, sending me to this world where birds don't shit. Dustless cursed in his heart. Dustless, you and Tuka go to pick up a friend for me. Perhaps seeing that Dustless was too bored, the store manager Yoshimura Gyozen patted his shoulder. Friend? Hearing this, Dustless turned his head and asked strangely, the store manager's friend? Do you need me to pick him up? That's right. You can go with Dong Xiang. Remember to wear this. The store manager handed Dustless an ugly mask, indicating that he should wear it when he went out. Otherwise, it would cause unnecessary trouble. This thing is useless to me. I've already been exposed. If I wear this thing outside, people will only think I'm more suspicious. Dustless shook his head. He placed the mask on the table and left with Dong Xiang. It was great to leave the shareholders' coffee shop. Dustless was really uncomfortable to live with a group of hungry ghouls. Kaneki Ken was the best example. Who are we picking up? He shouldn't be the store manager's friend. That old man is an SSS-level monster. No matter how bad his friend is, he should at least have the strength of an S-level, enough to fight against a special investigator. His eyes fell on Tuka's head. Dustless seriously analyzed, that old man is probably kind-hearted again. Let's go together to save the ghouls. This old man should at least be dedicated to his job. As a ghoul, he should eat more people instead of saving people. He is so kind to be a CCG. Dustless was entangled, the store manager was really not like a ghoul. You are a sharp guy. Kirishima Tuka looked at Dustless with great surprise, and immediately nodded and said, yes, the people we are going to pick up this time are Mrs. Fuguchi and her daughter Fuguchi Hinami. It turned out to be like this. Dustless heard the words and had a little impression of the mother and daughter. Hey, Amon, is this an unexpected gain? Mato Wusu twisted his cheeks and stared at the mother and daughter waiting for the car in front. His face that was like dead bark was enough to scare ordinary people. Mato-san, are you referring to the mother and daughter? Amon Kotaro also looked at Mato Wusu's eyes, and the figures reflected in his eyes were Fuguchi Hinami and her mother Fuguchi Ryoko. Yes, don't you think they are suspicious? I have seen this mother and daughter in some information. Mato Wusu's eyes were shining, and his right arm was trembling. Amon Kotaro was stunned and immediately asked very awkwardly, sorry, Mato-san, I don't see where they are like ghouls. Do you have evidence? Evidence? Glancing at Amon Kotaro, Mato Wusu said very disdainfully, no, Amon, sometimes intuition is enough. Let's go and see, the fox will show its tail sooner or later. Mom, look, someone is coming. Fuguchi Hinami pulled the corner of Fuguchi Ryoko's clothes and pointed to Mato Wusu with a smirk. White pigeon. Compared with the simple Fuguchi Hinami, Fuguchi Ryoko's face was obviously frozen. Under nervousness, she sweated uncontrollably. The white pigeons were wearing the same uniform, and they also held the same suitcase, so it was very easy to recognize them. Hinami, let's leave here first and wait for Tuka in other places. Seeing the crazy eyes of Mato Wusu, Fuguchi Ryoko, who realized that something was wrong, took Fuguchi Hinami and left quickly. Amon, did you see that? This mother and daughter really have problems. Mato Wusu sneered again and again, However, from their actions, they should be rookie ghouls who have just entered, and they chose to run when they met us. Doesn't this mean that she has problems? Her behavior is really stupid. Mado-san's words make sense. Amon Kotaro nodded deeply, but he was extremely puzzled. Intuition. Is it so accurate? What else do we need to investigate? Let's just train our intuition. It's good that the two of them ran away. Killing them on the street may cause unnecessary trouble. Witnessing Fuguchi Hinami and her daughter walking into the abandoned building, Mado Wusu quickened her pace, and her eyes flashed with tyrannical light. Decades ago, Mado Wusu's wife, Mado Wei, was killed by ghouls, and her body was bitten beyond recognition. Since then, Mado Wusu had become very energetic and hated ghouls. Chapter 2015. Therefore, every time she faced ghouls, her nose was more sensitive than a dog's nose, and she had an intuition that could predict the future. All in all, whether it was a coincidence or an accident, the mother and daughter pair, Flute Hinami and Flute Ryoko, were now in unprecedented trouble. Hey! Did you see that, Amon? These two want to run. Ha ha ha, stupid. Mado laughed sarcastically while running. They must die today. Yes, ghouls don't have the value of living in the world. Amataro nodded and agreed with Mado's words. Ordinary livestock could help humans fill their stomachs, but ghouls, not to mention filling the stomach of humans, if humans were not eaten by ghouls, they would be blessed by God. Hinami, you run first, I will drag them. Looking back, she found that Mado and Amon were getting closer and closer. Flute Ryoko stopped decisively and signaled Flute Hinami to leave first. She could only delay the time to give Flute Hinami time to escape. Run. You still want to run? It's ridiculous, if we can't even run away from two pigs, it's better to go home and farm. Mado, who caught up, sneered, and his pupils were filled with killing intent. For ghouls, he had a deep hatred and disgust. If he could, Mado would like to kill all the ghouls in the world. Mado-san. Kill them as soon as possible. Although Amataro felt that Mado Wusu's analogy was inappropriate, seeing his twisted cheeks, he tactfully shut up. People with mental disorders had countless sad past behind them, and there was no need to touch their scars. Go, Hinami, you will only drag me down if you stay here. Hurriedly pushing away the reluctant Hinami, Flute Ryoko's eyes turned into Kagun eyes, and huge Kagun-like insect wings swept out from her back. Humph, overconfident. Mado snorted and immediately looked at Flute Hinami, who was running away, and ordered, Amen Kun, I will leave that little devil to you. Don't worry. Amataro nodded and chased with all his strength. Who would have thought that at this time, the world in front of him suddenly became dazzling. Whoosh! In the abandoned promenade, there was a huge flash, and the bright light fell from the sky. Almost instantly, it was close to Amataro. Boom! The flash turned into a powerful kick, and it hit Amataro's chest. Poochie! The latter's face suddenly changed, and the red blood broke out of his throat. Hey, bullying orphans and widows, this kind of thing, your CCG seems to be very good. The light converged and gradually condensed into a human silhouette. The light voice was filled with endless calmness. Then, a handsome figure walked out of the light. SSS class ghoul. After seeing the newcomer, Wushua's old face twitched fiercely. He took out Kunk at the fastest speed in his life and stared at Wuchen fiercely. Old man, if I want to kill you, the time you took out Kunk is enough for me to die 100 times. It's hard to see a human being, you are so kind. First of all, let me introduce myself, and help your CCG to perfect my wanted information. My name is Dushless, it doesn't matter what you think of me. In the past few days, Dustless almost every day, he was not with ghouls all the time, and he felt depressed. Until he saw Mado and Amataro, two living people, his depressed mood was released, and there was a rare smile on his face. You two go away, I am in a good mood today, and I don't like to bully the weak. You are too weak, wait until you are promoted to a special investigator and then come to trouble me. Inari, there is no need to be afraid. At the same time, Kirishima Tuka also walked slowly with Flute Inari. At this moment, she was wearing a rabbit mask to prevent her identity from being exposed. She couldn't be like Dustless. Don't like to bully the weak. Mado Wusu almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Dustless's words were worse than beating him up. Amenkuen, are you okay? Mado Wusu stared at Amataro and saw the painful expression on his face. She sighed, the situation is not good for us, damn this guy, the fat meat in our mouth was snatched away by this guy. Amataro had been seriously injured by Dustless, not to mention continuing to fight, it was God's blessing if he could not become a burden. Sorry, Mado-san, I can only barely stand up, as for fighting, Amataro looked ashamed and bowed his head. He was killed by Dustless with one kick. He was really stupid, and he didn't even have a chance to fight back. It's good that you can't die. Mado breathed a sigh of relief and showed a rare relieved smile. He valued Amataro very much, and it was not a problem for him to surpass him in the future. Idiot, who do you think he can talk to you alive? Dustless glanced at Mado coldly and said with disgust, go away, before I change my mind. You! Amataro glared and wanted to stand up and fight with Dustless, but he didn't have the ability at all, and his whole body was filled with pain. Let's retreat. Mado glanced at Dustless fiercely, she was helpless and could only drag Amataro away. The opponent was an SSS class ghoul. As Dustless said before, Amataro was still alive because of Dustless's mercy. Chapter 2016. It was not that Mado Wusu wanted to destroy her own prestige and boost other people's morale. The SSS class ghoul was extremely ferocious. It was too easy to crush a ghoul investigator. For example, the highest level special investigator wanted to defeat the SSS class ghoul. Of course, there were only a few ghoul investigators who were similar to Arima Kisho. But then again, this SSS class ghoul let us go. Is his head broken by the door? Mado Wusu supported Amataro to leave. He was even ready to die, but the strange thing was that Dustless did not chase them. Who knows, are all ghouls so kind now? Amataro murmured in confusion, full of puzzlement. Hey, that kid will regret it. Mado Wusu's cheeks were distorted. He did not have the slightest sense of joy after the disaster. All that was left was endless hatred and disgust. Hatred was the pillar of Mado Wusu's life. Especially the sentence Dustless just said, it deeply hurt his self-esteem. I don't like to bully the weak. This sentence was obviously looking down on them. That guy is really courageous. CCG is worried that there is no suitable code name for him. This guy dares to take the initiative to tell his name to us. Amataro, do you think this kid is looking down on us, or is he too confident? Mado Wusu supported Amon Guntaro and always felt that this was a great humiliation. Yes, he will regret it. Kotaro Shimon's face was also full of anger. Today was definitely the most sullen day in his life. He was beaten up by Wuchin. He was almost killed in a face-to-face encounter. Now, he even needed Mado Wusu's help to go back. He had lost all his face. Are you crazy? On the other side, Mado Wusu and Amataro just left. Kirishima Tuka looked at Dustless angrily, and her words were full of anger. You even let the white dove go. Do you know how many ghouls will be killed by such behavior? Her beautiful eyes widened. Kirishima Tuka looked at Dustless and pouted her lips. Of course, if he remembered her ferocious ghoul identity, he wouldn't think she was cute at all. In any case, although there were good and bad ghouls, their nature of eating humans had not changed. Miss Kirishima, you may be mistaken about one thing. Dustless glanced at Kirishima Tuka faintly, and said softly, I have a cooperative relationship with your store manager, Yoshimura Kozen. Are you using this tone to talk to me? Are you ordering me? As soon as he finished speaking, the surrounding space suddenly became much colder. You. Noticing that the surrounding air had become cold, Kirishima Tuka's face changed greatly. She subconsciously looked down and was shocked to find that the ground under her feet was covered with a layer of crystal-clear ice. Have you figured out your position now? You are not qualified to order me, including Yoshimura Kozen. Remember, he asked me to join the antique coffee shop, not because I am willing to or find a reason to join. Dustless said very indifferently, and suddenly realized that he had chosen the wrong camp. A serious human being, mixing with a group of ghouls all day long, isn't this a brain disease? He was not a monster like Kaneki Ken. He was both a human and a ghoul. Eating humans was a necessary behavior. Every time he saw the group of ghouls eating humans, even with Dustless's nature, he felt a chill. Ghouls were really heavy creatures. No wonder CCG and ordinary people hated this group so much. Think about it, after your family dies and is eaten by ghouls, how will you feel? Let's go. Gently glancing at Kirishima Tuka, who was sluggish, Dustless immediately left, free and natural. Damn guy. Feeling angry, Kirishima Tuka finally chased Dustless's figure. Even if she was dissatisfied, there was no way. With the strength of Kirishima Tuka, the chance of defeating Amon Kotaro and Mato Wusu was very small. If Dustless refused to fight, Kirishima Tuka had no way to balance the two of them. Little girl, you overestimate yourself. You still want to order me around. Aren't you overestimating yourself? Seeing Kirishima Tuka's mouth pouting, Dustless smiled and said nothing. She wanted to control him. This little girl was still thousands of miles away. She was too arrogant. Tuka, I just heard the two white pigeons call him an SSS class ghoul. Flute Ryoko's face was shocked. Although fighting was not her strength, she naturally knew what an SSS class ghoul meant. An SSS class ghoul definitely belonged to the king of ghouls. Dustless's strength has indeed reached the SSS class, but what kind of species is he? I still don't understand at present. Kirishima Tuka's face was strange and speechless. So far, not only her, but everyone, including the store manager Yoshimura Kozen, could not figure out what kind of species Dustless belonged to. They said that this guy was a human, but his strength was extraordinary. Everyone also mistakenly thought that Dustless's Sharingan was a mutated Kaku Eye. Most people thought that Dustless was an out-and-out ghoul. But the strange thing was that as a ghoul, Dustless had never eaten human flesh. Dustless had no interest in this aspect, he preferred human food. As for when he saw human flesh, Dustless could not help but vomit. He could also understand why some humans, such as Mato Wusu, hated ghouls so much. SSS class ghoul, Flute Ryoko trembled, the shock on her face was difficult to hide, looking at Dustless's back. For her, this guy was like a god. Chapter 2017. Inside the antique coffee shop. Dustless and Kirishima Tuka brought back Deko Ryoko, as well as Deko Hataki and her daughters so quickly, which really surprised everyone. Of course, the store manager who knew that Dustless had the strength of an SSS class ghoul was no exception. Even if he encountered a special investigator, as long as it was not a Rimakisho, it would be a one-sided victory. Manager Yoshimura, thank you for your care. Deko Ryoko bowed 90 degrees to Yoshimura Kozen and thanked him excitedly. Instead of thanking me, it's better to thank Dustless and Tuka, they are the ones who did it. Yoshimura Kozen just smiled slightly, and then said, the essence of the antique coffee shop is to help ghouls. If you have any trouble, you can say it directly. To be honest, I do have a big thing that I need your help with. Deko Ryoko said bitterly. You don't want to. Dustless looked at Deko Ryoko thoughtfully and asked, you don't expect us to save your husband, do you? Such a ridiculous idea should not be taken seriously. Ridiculous? I don't think it's ridiculous. Kirishima Tuka stood up and said with approval, as long as you and the store manager work together, it is not a big problem to defeat the CCG in the 20th district. Hey, you are right. After hearing this, Dustless agreed with Kirishima Tuka's point of view, and immediately looked at Yoshimura Kozen with expectation, and asked with interest, so, are you interested? Manager Yoshimura. In fact, even if the manager closed his mouth and did not answer, Dustless also guessed his answer. Why did this old man painstakingly maintain the peace of the 20th district? He hoped that the ghouls and the white pigeons of CCG would get along well. How could he destroy CCG now? I refuse. Sure enough, as Dustless guessed, the store manager Yoshimura Kozen unexpectedly refused. If I didn't guess wrong, your husband may have been caught by CCG. I am afraid that they have already arranged an inescapable net, waiting for us to walk into the net. The closed magma eyes opened slightly, revealing the dark red eyes. The store manager continued, moreover, even if we are lucky enough to destroy the white pigeons in the 20th district, there are a large number of white pigeons from other special zones to support us until we are completely destroyed. After so many years of dealing with the people of CCG, the store manager maintained the current balance until CCG. If some forces tried to break the current balance, they would inevitably suffer CCG's crazy revenge. Really, in any case, it is impossible for ghouls and humans can live peacefully. Dustless shook his head. Sometimes, he really felt that the store manager's head was made of wood. If ghouls want to live, they must eat human flesh. Therefore, this is also destined to be a world of life and death between ghouls and humans. If they want to live together, it is tantamount to a dream. Hunger is hell for ghouls, no one can bear it, and human flesh is heaven for ghouls. Whether to choose hell or heaven, anyone with a little brain will make the right answer. Therefore, from the beginning, the store manager's starting point was wrong. In any case, ghouls and humans can't coexist, and one of the two sides must be completely eradicated. Right. A flash of inspiration suddenly flashed in his mind. Dustless looked at Kaneki Ken and said excitedly, since Kaneki can also be transformed from a human to a ghoul, why can't ghouls be transformed into humans? Since the combination of ghouls and humans can give birth to one-eyed ghouls, although the probability is small, it also shows that the body structure of the two has the same thing. Isn't Kaneki Ken a veritable example? From a human to a ghoul, but there is no rule that ghouls can't become humans. Boom boom boom. At this time, the tightly closed shop door was suddenly opened, and a handsome man with a strange appearance rushed out of the door, like a flower, instantly attracting everyone's attention. Yo! The person who came looked familiar at first glance. He took the lead to say hello, and immediately made a very exquisite etiquette. It looked like a top aristocrat who was born in some powerful family, and his whole body was full of nobility. Jukiyama Shi. It's a rare guest. After staring at the blue-haired man for a while, Dustless glanced at the identity of the person who came. This guy was a real S-class ghoul, and he also had an elegant title of gourmet. However, this guy's temperament looked elegant and calm, and his behavior was unattainable, but in fact, he was also a ferocious ghoul, and he had a unique nickname, Gourmet, which was enough to see Jukiyama Shi's pickiness of humans. Jukiyama, you are not welcome here. Kirishima Tuka seemed to have eaten gunpowder, and her face was indifferent and disgusted. Hey. If I remember correctly, you are a coffee shop here, is this how you greet guests? Store manager. Jukiyama. She smiled at Kurashima Tuka's threat, and even his eyebrows did not blink. It seemed that he did not put this little girl in his eyes at all. Hey, I got it. Seeing Jukiyama she sitting down, Dustless suddenly shouted. Kaneki, there is a guest, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and pour coffee for Master Jukiyama. Wuchen quietly swept behind Kaneki-ken and unceremoniously kicked his family. Kaneki, you brat, why are you still being reserved for me? Hurry up and step on the mine for me. Damn it. Being kicked by Dustless, Kaneki-ken just stared at him gloomily. When he was about to cut tea for Jukiyama he suddenly felt cold eyes around him. You are Kaneki-ken. The taste seems to be different from others. Chapter 2018. Does this guy want him to eat me? Kaneki-ken screamed in his heart, seeing Dustless gloating, he was full of hatred towards him. This bastard was obviously deliberately trapping him, he did not offend him but still hurt him, there must be an unknown premeditated plan. Ghouls were very sensitive to the smell of human beings, just like humans smelling delicious food, they could not help but eat, all these were subconscious instinctive reactions. Golo. As Dustless guessed, Jukiyama's mouth was dry, his eyes radiated the light of the wolf, his cheeks were almost crazy looking at Kaneki-ken, there was an indescribable desire. Everyone in the antique coffee shop, seeing this scene, all frowned. Dustless was obviously deliberately trapping Kaneki-ken, although he exuded a unique smell, everyone could smell it, but Dustless deliberately kicked Kaneki-ken, obviously deliberately trapping Kaneki-ken, let Jukiyama notice this delicious eye. Hee, his taste is pretty good. Dustless laughed with bad intentions, his mouth showed a bright smile, it was full of endless banter. You bastard, don't talk nonsense, I am not delicious. Kaneki-ken, who was desperate, quickly pointed to Dustless, his face showed clear fear. Being stared at by Jukiyama's greedy eyes, his body could not help but tremble. Manager Yoshimura, Jukiyama smiled faintly, looking at Dustless, his brows immediately frowned, he always felt that this guy was a bit familiar, but there was no memory of this guy in his impression. What's the matter? Yoshimura asked plainly. Why don't you give me a price, how about selling these two guys to me? Staring at Wuchen and Kaneki-ken, Yusanshi was so excited that he almost danced with joy. His eyeballs were so excited that they almost popped out. Such a wonderful food material, who are you saying is food material? A cold voice suddenly sounded, Dustless looked at Jukiyama with no expression, the dead eyes were like an abyss, the depth could not be seen. Although everyone's time together was still short, people like the manager Yoshimura and Kurashima Tuka, who were barely familiar with Dustless, knew that this guy was on the verge of exploding at this moment. Ha ha ha. As for Jukiyama he still had an ignorant elegant chuckle, he looked very gentlemanly, he did not know that he had been targeted by a real hungry wolf. Let Dustless teach this so-called gourmet a lesson. Seeing such a scene, the store manager was silent and did not express any opinions. He had always advocated that ghouls should live in harmony with each other, but Jukiyama had a nickname of a gourmet. Not only did he treat humans as delicious food, but he also did not let go of ghouls. Therefore, borrowing Dustless's hands to let him recognize himself, this might not be a bad thing. Do you know what kind of person is the stupidest person in the world? Glancing at Jukiyama Dustless took a sip of coffee and asked softly. Unconsciously, he had already liked coffee, which was bitter first and then sweet later. What do you mean? Jukiyama frowned, he subconsciously thought that Dustless was scolding him indirectly. The stupidest person in the world seemed to be talking about himself. The god of death is standing in front of you, but you said to the god of death that your weapon is too blunt, you can't kill me. Don't you think this is ridiculous? Even that idiot sees the god of death as food, this kind of person, is he so stupid that no medicine can save him? Dustless looked at Jukiyama-shi meaningfully. He almost said that the idiot was actually Jukiyama-shi. Hearing this, everyone in the antique coffee shop smiled and looked at Jukiyama-shi with a strange face. "You asshole!" Jukiyama-shi's face turned green. Dustless had already said so much. If he still didn't know that the idiot in Dustless's words was him, he should go buy a block of tofu and kill himself. "So you think you are the god of death? You talk big. Do you know who I am?" Jukiyama-shi suddenly stood up. He stared at Dustless with an unfriendly expression, his sinister face forming a cruel curve. He smiled evilly. "If that's the case, how about this? Let's make a deal. The loser, whoosh whoosh whoosh." However, before Jukiyama-shi could finish his sentence, Dustless's body turned into a stream of light and evaporated. "Where is he? Where is my food, asshole?" Jukiyama-shi rubbed his eyes and cursed loudly. When he realized that Dustless's presence had disappeared, he held his head and slammed the table in pain. "Damn it, where is my delicious food? Who allowed him to escape? This idiot." Kirishima Tuka was speechless. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry looking at the crazy Jukiyama-shi. She had heard that he was crazy, and now she knew that it was true. Escape. There is no such word in my dictionary. A cold voice suddenly came from behind, and the Scarlet Sharingan confirmed that it was Dustless who had disappeared before. "Ha ha ha, he didn't escape." Hearing this, Jukiyama-shi was stunned for a moment, then turned his head with ecstasy, but what he got in return was a merciless kick. Boom! The kick landed on Jukiyama-shi's abdomen. Jukiyama-shi's face suddenly changed, and he immediately screamed in pain. He was shocked to find that a casual kick made a big hole in his abdomen. Kakaka! Even the sound of bones breaking could be heard. Chapter 2019. Ao. Jukiyama-shi's hands covered his stomach, his cheeks were twisted violently, and he was in pain. "I remember, this guy is the SSS class ghoul that was recently listed by CCG." Jukiyama-shi suddenly remembered Dustless's reflection. He wanted to slap himself. Jukiyama-shi, the Jukiyama family he belonged to, had a lot of connections in Tokyo. When Dustless became an SSS class ghoul, he got the exact news. But at that time, he just glanced at him casually. After all, he and Dustless had no intersection, and the two sides had no grievances. But as the saying goes, enemies are bound to meet. Jukiyama-shi did not expect to encounter Dustless at this moment. "Oh no, this time I kicked an iron plate." Jukiyama-shi was sad. He suddenly provoked a character that he could not afford to provoke, and his heart was blocked. "It's all because of this hateful boy." Looking at Kaneki-ken, Jukiyama-shi's eyes were full of hatred. If it were not for Kaneki-ken, he would not be so absurd to eat such a big person as food. Therefore, all the mistakes were on Kaneki-ken's head. "You still have the mood to hate others." Seeing Jukiyama-shi wanted to eat Kaneki-ken alive, Dustless sneered. His right hand shook slightly. A large number of photons rushed out from his 5 fingers and turned into a hot light sword. Kusanagi no Kento. Kakaka. Seeing this, Jukiyama-shi also knew that a big battle was inevitable, and now he did not show weakness and released his Kagun, and his eyes became Scarlet Kagun. At the moment when he became a ghoul, Jukiyama-shi's body was full of raging and crazy aura. "It looks like you still want to eat me." Dustless snorted, staring at the Kagun wrapped around Jukiyama-shi's right arm, and muttered, "This seems to be Kaku. I remember that Kirishima Tuka's Kagun seems to belong to Yukaku." Looking up, he saw a circle of spiral Kagun wrapped around Jukiyama-shi's right arm, and the front end became a big sword filled with cold light. There are many types of Kagun, such as Kirishima Tuka's Yukaku, Kamishima Rise's Maigaku, Nishio Brocade's Maigaku, and Tsukuyama Seiki's Maigaku, all of which have different characteristics. Jaku's defense was stronger, but its speed was slower. Yuha's explosive power was extremely strong, but his consumption was excessive. As for Kamishiro Rise's Rinkaku, she had strong regenerative abilities, high attack power, but weak defense. In short, all the different types of Kagun have their own merits. I want to see what's the difference between you and the SSS class ghoul. I haven't tasted the meat of the SSS class ghoul yet. The moment the voice just fell, Jukiyama she rushed to Dustless like a breeze. You overestimate yourself. The store manager, Yoshimura Gyozen, shook his head and didn't even bother to look. Ao ao ao. A strange scream came from the corner of his mouth. Then Jukiyama she's right arm, which was condensed from Kagun, chopped toward Dustless's head. Seeing this, Dustless did not move, quietly looking at Jukiyama she's attack. The corner of his mouth was swept with an imperceptible sneer. He did not avoid it. It was completely unnecessary. Puchi. The sharp Kagun sword cut through Dustless's body and ruthlessly cut his whole body. The upper body and the lower body were separated, and fell to the side. Ha 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 ha, rampant laughter came out from Jukiyama she's mouth. He laughed triumphantly. What SSS class ghoul, in front of me, it's just, Puchi. Jukiyama she suddenly felt a sharp pain in his back. He turned his head and looked, his eyes almost exploded. Aren't you dead? Jukiyama she was shocked. He just cut Dustless into two. How did this bastard resurrect again? Moreover, Wu Chen's spirited appearance was obviously unscathed. You just slashed at the air, that's all. Warm flashes of light lingered around the compound wound, nourishing the gap in Dustless's body. In less than a few seconds, his whole body was completely restored to its original state, repaired by the elemental transformation ability of the glint fruit. It's my turn. Suddenly stepping on the ground, the floor exploded in an instant. Dustless's body broke out an amazing explosive nature power, and he rushed like thunder. My Kagun is the strongest Kagun in defense. I don't believe you have any means to tear him. Jukiyama she was not afraid. More dense Kagun broke out from his back, and immediately wrapped his whole body, as if covered with a layer of indestructible armor. His limbs and bones were wrapped by Kagun. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At the same time, the hot edge of Kusanagi sword suddenly came, and there was a close contact between the two. Puchi. Caw caw. Kagun, who Jukiyama she had high hopes for, was very fragile. It was pierced through by the edge of Kusanagi sword, and even his body was hit by a fatal blow. The scorched knife scar looked a bit shocking, and even filled the air with the smell of rotten meat. Plop. The attack brought by the attack obviously damaged Jukiyama she's body. He fell to the ground like a lamp without oil. The wound on his abdomen made him grimace in pain. You want to stop me with this kind of plaything? Glancing at the remains of Kagun on Jukiyama she's body, Dustless stepped on his head, and couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. These days, children's thoughts are so rich and ridiculous. You want to use a piece of paper to stop a shiny knife, Jukiyama she. If your teacher knew your behavior, he would probably be angry. In Dustless's eyes, was there any difference between Kagun's defense and a piece of paper? Damn it. Jukiyama she was angered by Dustless. His body wanted to stand up, but he was powerless. The knife had already brought great damage to him. Even if he was not a ghoul, Jukiyama she would have died at this moment. Chapter 2020. Dustless calmly looked down at the stunned Jukiyama she, the corner of his mouth slightly raised, and a hint of mockery could be seen on his face. You find it hard to believe. Dustless looked directly into his confused eyes as he explained, don't you think you're too childish? You always think you're special, and that others are destined to be played by you. This kind of groundless confidence is really not flattering. Only after bullying people for a long time did Jukiyama she subconsciously think that he was unique, and thus his confidence grew. In reality, he was just an ordinary person among all living things. There were many people who could defeat Jukiyama-shi, such as the owner of the antique coffee shop, Yoshimura Kozai, but he didn't care about him. No matter how much trouble a child caused, adults would only treat it as a joke, and at most give him a slap as a warning. Get out of here. Dustless stopped looking at Jukiyama-shi. He had already lost all interest in this guy. You're not going to kill me. Although Dustless's look of contempt made him very uncomfortable, Jukiyama-shi was still very happy. If they could live, most people would choose to continue living. Why would I kill you? Dustless took a sip of the coffee, the mellow taste lingering in his mouth, and asked back, I don't have a reason to kill you. I'm your enemy. Jukiyama-shi lowered his voice and looked at Dustless. Enemy. Suddenly, a thick sense of sarcasm appeared on his calm face. Kid, don't be so full of yourself. Do you think you're qualified to be my enemy? Do you know the true meaning of the word enemy? Only those who can face me head-on are called enemies. Trash like you who can be killed in one move is just a simple mouse, the kind that can be trampled to death. You. Hearing this, Jukiyama-shi was mad and glared at Dustless. He dared not to say anything, because what this guy said was an undeniable fact. An elephant with a huge body would never be bored enough to trample an ant to death just because it was bitten by an ant. The latter was too small, a small character not worth mentioning. The size of an ant was like a grain, and it would take a while to find it. Of course, the elephant would not bother with it, let alone care about its existence. The guy who brings shame to himself. Kirishima Tuka also responded with a sympathetic look. Let's ask, an S-class ghoul challenging an SSS-class ghoul, is it not bringing destruction to himself in the end? Let's wait and see. Yushan-shi glared at everyone, especially Wu-chin and Kaneki-ken. Wu-chin had crushed him, and Kaneki-ken had crushed him. Yushan-shi naturally held a grudge. Just after running a few steps and leaving the site of the antique coffee shop, Jukiyama-shi breathed a sigh of relief, feeling that his life was back. When he was under the same roof with Dustless, he always felt that his life was grasped in the hands of Dustless. If he blew a little bit harder, his soul would be gone. This feeling was really uncomfortable, especially Jukiyama-shi, who was used to being high in the mountain. He was severely destroyed by Dustless, almost leaving a serious psychological barrier. However, as soon as he left the antique coffee shop, an unexpected figure hiding in the aisle revealed a meaningful smile at the corner of his mouth. This is the SSS class ghoul. I heard that he is called Dustless. His strength is good, but it is too strange. The girl's appearance was delicate, her delicate face was like a carved jade, and her pink lips made people can't help but want to go up and peck gently. This person was called Takatsuki-sen, the leader of Aojirai Tree, and also the daughter of the store manager. A day ago, she felt the 20th district, but Takatsuki-sen was not in a hurry to contact Dustless, but chose to secretly observe the movements of Dustless. Is this guy really a ghoul? Why can't he fight at all, even Kagun Eyes and Kagun? Without exception, Takatsuki-sen made the same question as others. The fighting method of ghouls was usually to use Kagun to duel, but Dustless seemed to be a bit strange. Whether it was the previous battle, or the one-sided suppression just now, it seemed that he did not use Kagun as a weapon. I can join forces with her, maybe I can break the order of the world today. The girl's face outlined a charming dimple. Takatsuki-sen was quite proud to touch her chin, her white fingers slid around, her watery eyes sometimes flashed a cunning charm. It was hard to imagine that he was the SSS class ghoul, the one-eyed king. That guy is, at the same time, Dustless in the antique coffee shop. His sight also moved slowly, and finally fell on the leaving figure. The messy and slender hair was very conspicuous. The real SSS class ghoul came to me. Suddenly remembering the identity of the person who came, Dustless suddenly became interested, and said to himself, this Yoshimura Gikusen is too kind, I was wrong to associate with this guy. Although he was an SSS class ghoul, Yoshimura Gikusen did not have the appearance of an SSS class ghoul, perhaps the false piece meant more to him. As for his daughter, Takatsuki-sen, she was an out-and-out butcher. It was absolutely impossible to be soft-hearted. Even the reason why antiques would be annihilated in the future was completely because Takatsuki-sen deliberately sold the news to CCG. It had to be said that a daughter like Takatsuki-sen was rare. However, this time, the way Dustless took was different from before. The reason why he cooperated with the manager was that he wanted to know more about the world. Although he had the memory of the previous life, some knowledge that he did not understand must be popularized by the manager to Dustless. But if the object was changed to the Aojirai tree, it was not necessary, he could directly suppress it. Chapter 2021. I still have something to do, I have to leave for a while. After Tsukuyama she left, Dustless suddenly spoke, and immediately walked to the room where he usually slept. It seemed that he was going to pack his luggage. You want to leave? Yoshimura Gikusen frowned and asked. He was sure that he was going to go far. If he just went out for a walk or to relax, there was no need to pack his luggage. Yes. Dustless simply admitted, his eyes spread slightly, taking in everyone's gentle faces, and then said bluntly and indifferently, this environment is not suitable for me. Do you think this peaceful life is annoying? Yoshimura Gikusen's rough cheeks were slightly tight, he looked quite nervous. The piece he created was torn by Dustless, they could only stand on the opposite side of each other. Who knows? His scarlet eyes flickered with nightmarish demonic light, just like a hungry wolf that chose a person to devour. A strange brilliant smile appeared on his dry mouth, and then Wuchen walked to his room. This guy, the store manager Yoshimura Gikusen clenched his fist. At first, he drew Dustless to cooperate with him. The real purpose was that he hoped that Dustless could enjoy this rare piece, and in the future, he would face crises and defend it. But now it seemed that it was just a dream, out of reach. How could a person who was keen on war enjoy peace? Mr. Tetsuya, Yoshimura Gyozen looked at the silver-haired man beside him, revealing a deep and frightening pair of eyes. He said in a heavy tone, when Wuchen leaves later, secretly follow him. If you discover that he has done something out of the ordinary, if you can kill him, try to kill him, if you can't, you can withdraw. Pay attention to safety. Tetsuya heard the words and nodded with no expression. Even if he knew that Dustless's strength had reached the SSS level, he was still willing to take risks. Really, how long has it been that Takatsuki-san ran away? In the dark, smelly alley, there was a foul smell everywhere. Human bones could be seen everywhere on the ground, and there were clear sounds of crying and howling. It was probably some hungry ghouls who were eating. The young man who looked very young, about 17 or 18 years old, was wandering in the alley. The person who looked around was Dustless, who was looking for the trace of Takatsuki. Senator Dustless's plan was quite simple. He took the identity of the boss of Aojirai Tree from Takatsuki's senator. If she was willing to be a follower, then it was easy to talk. If she resisted, he could only beat her until she was convinced. There seems to be a rat following us. His eyes leisurely looked back, and then his observation hockey quietly spread, and all the movements within a few hundred meters appeared clearly under Dustless's eyes. So it's him. Dustless continued to move forward without batting an eyelid. He pretended that he didn't know anything, but the raging light in the depths of his eyes quietly floated. Dustless had already severed all ties with the antique coffee shop, but there were still rats following him. Naturally, Dustless would not be courteous. They chose their own path, and no one forced them. Moreover, they had to pay the price for their mistakes. What was that feeling just now? Could it be a misconception? Staring at Dustless's back, square lotus mark didn't know why, but in the end, he found it difficult to chase after him. When Dustless suddenly turned his head, Four-Sided Lotus had a feeling that he had been seen through. All the weaknesses in his limbs and bones were exposed under that indifferent gaze. The huge pressure even made Four-Sided Lotus feel a suffocating sense of crisis. Continue to track, it must be an illusion just now. It is obviously an SSS class ghoul. How can it have that kind of deadly oppressive feeling? After hesitating for a few seconds, Square Lotus Mark's eyes were bright, glowing with bright and firm light, and resolutely stepped forward. No matter what, he was also an SS class ghoul. Even if he could not defeat an SSS class ghoul, he should not have that kind of illusion. Under the gaze of those black eyes, Tetsuya Rincher only felt that he was as small as a lonely boat and vulnerable. What's more, Square Lotus Mark had fought with Arima Kisho when he was young. Although the final outcome was a fiasco, he still escaped from Arima Kisho's hands. Maybe this was the source of his confidence. Since he could escape from Arima Kisho's hands, why can't he escape from Dustless? He dared to go in alone, and ignored my warning just now. Young people nowadays are bold and courageous, but their behavior is extremely stupid. Under the search of observation hockey, Dustless walked by feeling and quickly found a warehouse that had been abandoned for a long time. It was very dilapidated and estimated that it had been abandoned for a long time. It was not bad to make Square Lotus Mark's grave. At least after being killed, he would not be eaten by other ghouls. Damn it, where did that guy go? How did he disappear in the blink of an eye? The Four-Sided Lotus, who had followed Wu Qin, looked around. After searching for a long time, he still couldn't find any trace of Wu Qin. Immediately, he revealed an anxious and exasperated expression. The person who was given to him by the store manager, Yoshimura Gyozen, was to try to kill Dustless or follow him. Now don't mention killing Dustless, now even the person was gone. How can he chase? His face inevitably showed an irritated color. Damn! Square Lotus Mark, who was angry, kicked the bottle at his feet to vent his anger. Whoosh! At the same time, the cold wind suddenly surged behind him, and the mysterious person with blood-red eyes suddenly appeared. Since you are so irritated, then I will reluctantly send you to hell. Chapter 2022. Who is it? Hearing this cold tone, Fujiwara quickly turned his head, and the scarlet three-tomo Sharingan appeared in his eyes, clearly indicating his identity. Buzz buzz buzz. Raising his head, he saw Dustless tightening his thumb. Dazzling light gathered and aimed at Liancher's head. Swish! Swish! Sensing the danger, Four-Sided Lotus hurriedly dodged to the side to avoid the light attack. However, compared to the speed of light, the Square Lotus was still too slow. It could even be said that compared to the speed of light, the Square Lotus was as slow as a tortoise. Puchi! A straight beam of light shot towards Fang Liancher, and a charred hole appeared on his body. It was obvious that he had been pierced through by the beam of light. Damn you! Fang Liancher endured the pain and looked at the wound on his chest. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. If he hadn't moved his body slightly, his heart might have been pierced through at this moment. Caw caw caw. Since Dustless wanted his life, Square Lotus naturally would not back down. He decisively chose to return the favor. Swish! Swish! On the back, the slender Kagun shot out, and the surface was covered with thick and hard scales. It looked quite domineering. At the same time, the eyes of the Square Lotus also became the Kagun eyes that belonged to the ghouls. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. He danced with all his might, and the long and narrow Kagun swept out from the left like a long whip. Humph! Seeing this, Dustless coldly laughed and completely ignored the incoming attack. He didn't even look at it. Armament hockey hardening. His limbs and bones were instantly covered with black skin, emitting an indestructible, dazzling light. Bang! The slender cocoon hit Dustless's body. If it were an ordinary person, the thick scales covering the cocoon could easily tear a person's skin apart. However, the scene that happened to Dustless made Square Lotus's jaw drop. Caw caw caw. The moment he hit Dustless, his flesh and blood didn't separate as he imagined. Instead, his cocoon couldn't withstand Dustless's hard body. The moment he hit Dustless, his cocoon dismembered itself. Caw caw caw. The seemingly solid cocoon collapsed like glass. How is this possible? This explosive scene almost blew Fong Lianshur's eyes out. He stared at the calm Dustless with a dumbfounded expression. His heart was instantly filled with a storm. The hardness of this guy's body has reached an unprecedented level, and the body of a ghoul is so hard. Even if it was an SSS-class ghoul, it would never be able to do this. Tetsuya Tensei used all his strength to attack Dustless, but sadly, the first thing to collapse was his cocoon. On the other hand, Dustless was completely fine. This kind of vulgar joke was not funny at all. You are stunned. With a disdainful snort, Dustless looked at Tetsuya Tensei's body, and his strange eyes turned. Buzz buzz buzz. The Scarlet Pentagonal Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan seemed to be screaming, making an unknown and terrible movement. Dustless's eyes focused on Tetsuya Tensei's body, and the place that was stared at by Dustless suddenly had an unexpected change. Amaterasu. With Dustless's order, the Scarlet Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan rotated, and Tetsuya Tensei's body burned with a black unknown evil light in the blink of an eye. Bastard, what is this situation? When did I get burned? The burning pain swept all over his body like a tide. Tetsuya Tensei's cheeks were full of fear, and he frantically extinguished the black flame burning on his body. But it seemed to be of no use, the flame could not be extinguished at all. Shit! After realizing the uniqueness of Amaterasu, Tetsuya Tensei was desperate. He didn't expect Dustless to be so evil, and also have such a terrible trick. Poochie! In the end, Tetragrammaton gritted his teeth and cut off his right arm and shoulder. The burning Amaterasu was separated from Tetragrammaton's body. Your courage is commendable. Seeing this, Dustless couldn't help but look at him in a new light, but his eyes were still cold. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Light appeared, and Dustless instantly disappeared again. He was like a ghost, coming and going without a trace. I am not his opponent, I must find a way to reverse this embarrassing situation. Tetsuya Tensei quickly planned in his heart, realizing the gap between him and Dustless. He was frustrated, and Dustless was bullying him like stepping on an ant. Remembering Yoshimura Gyozen's order, Tetsuya Tensei immediately turned around and fled to the exit. Since he couldn't kill Dustless, he could only run for his life. Retreat. After making up his mind, Tetsuya Tensei fled at lightning speed. There was no other way, the difference in strength between them was too big. Did I ask you to run? Humph, 90 Black Coffin of Breaking Tao. The pure black shadowless blades appeared out of nowhere, and attacked from all directions. Tetsuya Tensei didn't even have a place to hide. Wherever he ran, the black light would follow, as if it had eyes, and he couldn't get rid of it. Poochie. 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 In the end, Tetsuya Tensei's body was penetrated by the black light, and countless pieces of rotten flesh peeled off from his body. Some parts of his body were even reduced to bones, and all his organs were destroyed by Dustless. Plop. After being injured so easily by Dustless, Tetsuya Tensei lost the strength to support his body, and fell to the ground helplessly. Chapter 2023. It's sad. Glancing down at Sifang Rincher, Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. This guy clearly knew that his strength had reached the SSS level, but he had to come here to play some secret tracking. Before, Dustless also deliberately revealed his breath to be discovered by Sifang Rincher. His original intention was to hope that this guy would be sensible and leave. Who knew that he was still so ignorant and finally followed him? Cough cough cough, Sifang Rincher was obviously not completely dead. Although his internal organs had been destroyed, he still had a breath left. You are really like what the store manager said, you want to destroy the peace he created. Looking at Dustless blankly, Sifang Rincher looked helpless. Funny. Hearing this, Dustless stepped on Sifang Rincher's head and said disapprovingly, the so-called peace can't be created by a retired old man, he is too self-righteous. Kakaka. With Dustless's voice fell, Sifang Rincher's head suddenly exploded and turned into a pile of brain. And you, suddenly turning his head, Dustless stared at the looming figure in the darkness and said coldly, you have seen enough, now it's time to come out and perform. This protagonist is dead, the other protagonist should show up. Amaterasu. It seemed that it was not fierce enough, Dustless destroyed Sifang Rincher's body, and the black flame evaporated it. Ah, this fierce style is very similar to us ghouls. A clear and melodious female voice was pleasing to the ear. In the darkness, a figure could be clearly seen strolling over. Her messy long hair added a touch of wildness to the young girl. How should I call you? The girl gradually came out of the darkness. Dustless asked faintly, Ito Yoshimura, Takatsuki-sen, or, the One-Eyed King is more suitable. By the way, you seem to be the boss of Aijairai Tree, right? What's the name of the idiot who was taught a lesson by me last time? It seems to be called Jason. He is also from your organization, right? He dares to attack me, is it your order as the boss? You, hearing this, Takatsuki-sen's calm face suddenly collapsed. Where does this guy come from? Why does he seem to know all my secrets at a glance? Takatsuki-sen looked at Dustless with a vigilant face, and could not help but lower her head and ponder. Tell me why you're here. Since it was rare to talk nonsense, Dustless simply said, if I'm interested, maybe you can leave here safely. You're really arrogant, Takatsuki-sen could not help but be speechless. It was the first time for her to see someone like Dustless who was so arrogant. Everyone was SSS class ghouls, and even one-eyed ghouls had more advantages than two-eyed ghouls. She really did not know where Dustless's confidence came from. How about we cooperate? Takatsuki-sen said her chips and said, overturn this rotten world in one fell swoop, establish a new system, a world where ghouls and humans coexist, bullshit. Unexpectedly, Dustless was not interested in listening to Takatsuki-sen's nonsense, and sneered, One-Eyed King, it seems that I have overestimated you, you are as stupid and childish as your father. What did you say? Hearing this, Takatsuki-sen looked angry, and there were a lot of kagun erupting from her back, and it was about to cover her whole body. Don't you understand such a simple truth? You're just a child who has not grown up. Dustless despised Takatsuki-sen for a while, and continued to satirize, can a mouse get along with a cat? Can a snake coexist with an eagle? Can water and fire be compatible with each other? When you say that humans and ghouls can coexist peacefully, with all due respect, I already feel that you are mentally ill. The way of life of ghouls was to feed on humans. It was destined that the two sides could not coexist peacefully, even if they ate the dead people. If your family's elder who died of illness was eaten by ghouls, can you tolerate it? From the moment when ghouls were born, they were destined to fight with humans until one side was completely annihilated. That is to say, Takatsuki-sen's eyes suddenly shot out scarlet anger, and she asked coldly, that is to say, you intend to refuse to cooperate with me? You want to leave me alone? It seems that you want to be my enemy. Be your enemy. You're really ignorant. After a little exercise, Dustless rushed to the front of Takatsuki-sen in an instant, and the sharp edge of Kusunagi's sword was taken out of the scabbard. "I'm not your enemy, it's just a boring one-sided annihilation like just now." So fast. Her pupils suddenly shrank, and she was shocked with cold sweat. She panicked in her heart, "We are both SSS class ghouls, why is the speed gap so big? This kid." Shoo shoo shoo. At the same time, a large number of Kagun gushed out from Takatsuki-sen's back. Like a poisonous snake, it went to Dustless to bite. Pucci. Who would have thought that the moment they touched the edge of Kusunagi's sword, they were all cut off and swept away. Light speed kick. Then Dustless rose in the air, his right foot covered with high-density flash, and unceremoniously greeted Takatsuki-sen, who had been wrapped by a large number of Kagun. Boom boom boom. Under the violent impact, the Kagun that had just covered the whole body collapsed and disappeared in an instant. Takatsuki-sen revealed her original appearance again. SSS class ghouls. This strength is really disappointing. The sword pointed at Takatsuki-sen's neck. Dustless sighed with boredom, and at the same time, he suddenly noticed two strange breaths behind him, and then he sneered again and again. "Your lackey is here too. You're overestimating yourself." All of a sudden, light filled the sky as countless divine weapons drilled out of the void. Wong Kai Bao. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.